Oh, why the fuck is that guy not on? Uh-oh. Every time. Never easy.
Are you a filmmaker or a content creator and looking for high quality music and sound effects for no additional fees? If so, you gotta check out artlist.io for your videos. My name is Joey Palmers and I'm a commercial film.
There we go. Alright, why is my camera not working? Why is it a fucking battle every fucking time, bro? Alright. This is kind of a banger. That works. Bullshit. On the Logie. No. No. Ooh, same camera. Let's go, my guy. There you go.
Other banks go out of their way to make redeeming credit card rewards needlessly complicated. But Discover
Shut up. I'm not gonna give you this easy W here. I'm gonna die on this hill. Okay, OBS. What's going on? It's weird. Hello, hello. All right. Let's do this little Destiny Sneeko Nick.
Is unable to create these large-scale deceptions. That I can give you.
Destiny's just pure content. But yeah, I guess I had to preempt this. I'll just start recording. Who cares? Howdy, Obwaz. So to preempt this, I'm about to watch a debate. Not even really. No, it's a debate with Destiny Sneeko and Nick Fuentes. And as people might know, people are pretty upset with Destiny right now because he had Nick Fuentes over at his house. Where they were fairly cordial and for the most part debating. I think Destiny looked really good. Kind of showed how Nick Fuentes is really good at presenting his ideas, making his ideas look good. He's good at like these like kind of random reaches, like bringing up Strauss or whatever. Tying into other like philosophical features that I think a lot of people know, or at least like feel like they know, like Strauss. And he makes it feel like it's very like this guy's telling the truth, where the mainstream media, the government, all these people are out of line, but I'm on the money. I'm telling you the truth because I'm not scared of anything. Look how much I've been canceled. All this stuff. And I think Destiny does a really good job of saying you're really good at setting up this, this through line. But if anyone who's competent and knows their stuff like Destiny and can present their stuff and not be thrown off by you talking about Jewish people or black people or like some wild thing, and you can just stay focused and not get thrown off and get offended by all the little things that Nick Fuentes says, you can really expose his ideas for being weak, and they are weak. I will watch this next. We'll have like maybe a little Destiny walkthrough. Because I have no issues with Destiny doing this. This girl needs to respond so we can keep arguing with this girl on Twitter about the Korean War. It's pretty exciting. So Twitter was kind of in an uproar about it, of course, because everyone's on their high horse about everything else. And someone who said something, which I think is pretty funny, is I name my replies. That's how that works. So, and we'll even play the clip. And the clip is kind of funny, but it's kind of an example of Fuentes kind of does this. He does this. I call it a shtick, where he is making serious points. I think we can all agree with that. That he's being serious, but he does it in kind of a joking way, where like almost the main points are serious. But he's kind of doing these like fun little quips on the side. that are usually somewhat racist or sexist or just they're just offensive. Maybe that's the best way to put it. And I think it's very easy to get distracted by those, but the point he's making in the center is important, and it's important that you focus on that central point. And if you do that, you can kind of have him get off what he's saying. Because I think even when he's doing that through line, and that through line is a joke, I think it's still important to debunk that joke. And I think Destiny does a really good job of, instead of getting serious and kind of doing like this moral outrage about what Nick is saying, he's debunking it jokingly too. So then because Nick's probably greatest defense is when he talks to someone who's to his left. And you even see this with someone on the right. So for example, there's a guy named Mr. Medicare who's like, he's pretty much right-wing, but not really. He's fairly apolitical. And Nick Fuentes and that guy had they had a debate. Mr. Medicare looked a lot better than Nick Fuentes. And basically Nick Fuentes, against this guy named Mr. Medicare, who clearly is not a virtue signaler, doesn't get offended, doesn't care about that kind of stuff, is a real like kind of free speech advocate, like don't get offended, don't be a snowflake, whatever. And Nick Fuentes ended up kind of using that excuse, that kind of defense against this guy named Mr. Medicare, just being like, why are you getting so like, like, why are you calling me out for my behavior, all this stuff, like, all is fair game. Because he wants to use that. And I think that's kind of his big way to kind of signal to his audience that the ideas I have, these people can't handle. And I'm telling it like it is. And most people, like Sneeko would say here in the bottom, would be, yeah, these people are bots. That, if you go off script, they don't know how to handle it. Their brains don't work. And I think Nick really uses that to his advantage, where he'll start saying some fucked up shit, and he wants you to get uncomfortable and kind of turn off and not engage with his points anymore, because you just want to say, this guy's so messed up in the head that like we need to do our best to like isolate him on the internet, which has been a complete failure to isolate him on the internet. Because now he's his own streaming platform. So the isolating is not working, and you could even argue that, oh well, it's not that popular, it's still good that he's not reaching the audience he would on YouTube or Twitch, but he is forever on the internet, and now he cannot. It's much harder to combat him, and it looks like it just. I don't want to get on this tangent. I'm gonna get off that. I'm gonna pull the. I'm gonna click the eject button. But what I'm saying is Nick. It's difficult to discern whether he's being serious or joking. But I would say he's almost always, even when he's joking, he's being serious. Not like 100%. Like he could be kind of joking, like how you'll kind of make a joke and you'll be like, no, but it's true. You'll make you'll see like like people make fucked up jokes, and that's kind of it'll be like really outrageous, and you'll be like, hold on, no, I'm actually being serious, and then it's like, oh, it's even more fucked up. Wow. And I think Nick does that here, and I think Destiny does a good job of, instead of it kind of being like, hold on, like, let's be really serious here. He maintains the kind of jovial atmosphere and attitude, and yet forces Nick to walk back his point. I think that's just, wow, what a talent, am I right? All right, let's watch this.
Yeah. Liberals they've been totally domesticated by soy, so they won't blow up cars and things. But all right-wing terrorism is fake, so that's also true at the same time.
Well, except for 9/11, that was Bush.
That was Mossad.
That was Bush,
that
right-wing. Does Israel count as right-wing terrorism?
Oh, yeah, actually, you know what?
So there you go.
Yes. Let's go. That's what you call synthesis.
Yeah.
Liberals.
No, you know what I mean? Like, that's just a good way to handle that, where it kind of, because Nick kind of does want to make, his whole movement is that liberals, leftists, socialists, social justice warriors, whatever, gay people, trans people, basically anyone who's not white and Catholic and a man, they're like just kind of not fit to run a government, to do all these things that like the founding fathers could do. Like the things that the founding fathers did, the wisdom they had, the mental tools they had, could only be found in a white male religious person. And I think it's just really good that any little point you can push Nick off of to just be like, that's incorrect, is really effective. And I think Destiny, by maintaining his composure and staying in that the jovial attitude, does a good job of having Nick back off his point. And then they're not. He's not giving Nick that chance to be like, oh, why are you getting so offended? Like all that stuff. He's not giving him that. Regardless. So I actually think this clip is like a positive thing. And the Surfs is a socialist who, let's remember, he's debated Lauren Southern and I got another guy named JF. Both people who are I don't know what JF is now. Who knows what Lauren Southern is? But at the time, let's just say they're alt-right. They're very conservative people with, admittedly, pretty wacky, hardo ideas. And he made them look like they had great ideas, and the Surfs had horrible ideas. But the Surf says, Destiny has now done multiple IRL streams with an actual Holocaust denier and leader of the American First white supremacist movement. Their antics include Nick Fuentes asking people on the street if they're Jewish and then saying based when they're not. Okay. And I took some issue with this, so I responded to it. And I said he's pushing back against his ideas and laying bare how weak his ideas are. I 100% fully believe that. I think if you think your ideas are good, I think you debating with people like Nick Fuentes, whose ideas you think are horrible, is like the best thing you can do. Because if your ideas are better, they're going to beat his ideas. And obviously, there's always going to be that little thing of, well, are they more like rhetorically effective? Are they better debaters? All this stuff. Are they going to make a mockery of you? Whatever. I think we can all agree that Destiny is probably one of the best debaters on the internet today. English speaking. Who knows what other language debaters there are. But in the English speaking internet world, I think Destiny is probably the one person that you can probably trust to be like, he'll do a good job of debating people with these horrible political ideologies, whatever. And I think Destiny did a really good job in this debate. And I think Nick does a good job of or I should actually say both of them did a good job. Because I think Destiny's whole plan here, with kind of being cordial with Nick Fuentes, is that, number one, he's never really giving Nick Fuentes the opportunity to do that defense of like moral outrage, why don't you grow up and, see the world for what it is, take the red pill. I think Destiny does a really good job of keeping his composure, being able to engage at the level that Nick Fuentes is, and then still destroying his ideas again and again and again. And maybe the Surfs just can't understand that, can't realize that. Maybe the Surfs probably thinks we just shouldn't engage with them, and then the problem will just go away, because that's how it always works, right? But I really think, like, people make fun of the marketplace of ideas thing, and I just so truly believe that I don't think it's really much about marketplace ideas. I just think you have to debate these people. Because their greatest weakness, these red pillars, their greatest weakness is that a big part of their ideology is masculinity. So if they turn down to debate you, and you're of what, similar size, or you have a following, you're known to debate, I mean, and they say no, I mean, you call them a pussy, like, that's going to be them going against their ideology. I mean, obviously, like, I don't think I would be able to go up to Nick Fuentes or Sneako and be like, oh, you should debate me or else you're a coward. I think they would just say, like, dude, we don't know who you are. I'd be like, that's fair. But I just think it's a good idea that we challenge these guys' ideas and just show that their ideas are not nearly as strong as they're able to present them and make them look. Because a lot of the people they want to engage with are people who are essentially apolitical, where if you don't really care much about politics, I'm sure Nick Fuentes can come off very convincing. He can start telling you a lot of stuff about, like, I don't know, like race realism, political funding from Israel, all that kind of stuff. And, people might be like, like, it doesn't sound wrong. I've kind of heard stuff about that. And, now that you're saying it, and, like, some of the stuff, you are, he's probably sprinkling in a couple facts here and there, and people, and causing that person to be like, like, what you're saying makes a lot of sense here. And that's why I think it's really good for someone like Destiny to debate Nick Fuentes, because I think it really gives the opportunity for Nick Fuentes to kind of do all these ideas and Destiny to just knock them all down. Because I think if anyone's honest with themselves, and we would hope they are, and maybe they're not, I kind of go back and forth whether people, audience members who watch political content but don't make their own political content are actually in good faith. And the reason I'm excluding the actual presenters of it, like, for example, the serfs, if he became a capitalist today, you have to kind of wonder what that would do to his income. It would probably be very, very detrimental to his income. He has a big incentive not to do that. And so does Nick Fuentes. And so essentially does Destiny. He says he doesn't. And I kind of believe he doesn't. Because he's mentioned changing his ideas, and it does seem like he's willing to change his ideas. And a lot of people have said he's changed over the years. And so you might even think that, I mean, they always present as him changing as being a bad thing, but I think you can argue here that him changing is actually a good thing. It shows that he's open-minded, he's willing to update his beliefs based on new information. But Nick Fuentes probably can't update his ideas because he's the head of a political movement. And when you're the head of a political movement, it doesn't really make sense for you to soften. And he's a radical. That's a really important part. He's a radical political ideologue. And so it's not a good look for him to become less radical, for him to start endorsing the establishment, for him to start endorsing establishment Republicans. Like, his big draw, Nick Fuentes' big draw in the beginning, was his opposition to Charlie Kirk, where Charlie Kirk was like this establishment Republican, but was soft in a lot of areas that Nick Fuentes thought was bad, and Nick Fuentes basically wanted Charlie Kirk to adopt more kind of white identitarian ideas, which basically means like political positions that benefit white people, specifically in America. Okay, that was a tangent. But so he's pushing back against his ideas. Destiny is pushing back against Nick Fuentes' ideas and laying bare how weak Nick Fuentes' ideas are. Wow, not a great use of pronouns in that sentence. And I think that's exactly true. And I said it's also dangerous to essentialize these people being Nick Fuentes. Because one thing I keep seeing from leftists is that if someone is, a racist, a Nazi, whatever, bad thing, whatever bad political position, they're done. They should never be forgiven. They can't change. They're always going to be bad, and it's over for them. They're never going to be allowed back into, the club or whatever that club may be, like the club of leftists. They'll almost never be allowed in. You could argue that that's not really true. We saw with this other political commentator named Hunter Avallone, he was able to do that. And Hunter Avallone was never that radical. He was a pretty standard conservative. Where Nick Fuentes, Lauren Southern, whoever, are radicals, or were radicals. So I don't think the fact that Hunter Avallone was forgiven and allowed to allowed into the fold of the left to be really indicative of the mood of the left in terms of accepting people's apologies. And plus, you also have to remember that Hunter Avallone became like almost like a full-on progressive. So you have to kind of ask, like, well, what if they didn't become a full-on progressive? Like Lauren Southern, for example, who was, trying to chase down migrants, illegal immigrants, who were trying to get into Italy illegally and was trying to stop their boats, was okay with some of them drowning in the Mediterranean. What if she just said, yeah, I thought that was a little too far. I'm just kind of a standard Republican now, like Mitt Romney or whatever. I think people would still be like, I hate you still just as much, even though your positions are clearly much better than they were, where they were much more dangerous in terms of my own political project. Because I think it's important that these people aren't, and maybe it's a bad way to look at, just Nick or someone who has an incentive to change because they have an audience and they'll make money off it. But the audience members themselves, I think it's maybe important to look at them as, we probably want to give them maximum information. So Destiny here, I think at the very least, he's softening their stances towards liberalism and just being more moderate in general. And I think that's really important to kind of, because these people they're not done. And I think a great example of this, to just kind of prove the point. And I'm not saying that Destiny is literally Daryl Davis. And Daryl Davis, just read his description here. Daryl Davis is an American R&B blues musician and activist. His efforts to fight racism, in which, as an African American, he has engaged with members of the Ku Klux Klan, has convinced a number of Klansmen to leave and denounce the KKK. And I think he's up to like 200 or something like that. And the way Daryl Davis would do that is essentially he would seek out Klansmen, because he was writing a book at the time, and at first he just kind of wanted to like study them, see what makes them tick. And so he would be sitting with them, and kind of his strategy was he was going to try to befriend them, and he would. Where these Klansmen would sit down and treat Daryl Davis as an equal, which might not seem like a huge mind-blowing thing, but it is. Where someone's in the Klan, their kind of whole thing is they're against anyone. They think anyone who's non-white probably at best shouldn't be living in America, and at worst probably genocide. And Daryl Davis was able to show that hey, I'm a regular person. You can see that I'm a regular person. I'm engaging you as a regular person. I'm not any different than you. I just look different than you. And I think in a lot of ways, I think Destiny does that, where he's showing these people in Nick Fuentes' audience that he's showing them that their ideas, although they might feel like a little fanatical or whatever, they might feel very solidly about their opinions. There's probably a good chance that you're wrong. And a lot of Nick Fuentes' ideas, at least with this whole Destiny arc here, it's all been very conspiratorial. Like, the government is out to get you. The government has the power to do all these things. The government's pulling a lot of the strings. Anything the government tells you, you have to doubt because the government is inherently untrustworthy. Which is, and we'll get into that next when we go to the conspiracy debate and kind of the issues I have with it. But I also think it's good for us to see Nick Fuentes is not just a Nazi, Nazi personified. I think it's important that we see him as a somewhat regular person when he's not talking about politics. Even like a charming person when he's not talking about politics. I think that's really important. Kind of say this person is operating as a person would. They have all that stuff going on. They just have some fucked up beliefs, and we have to attack those beliefs. And hopefully the person's other processes, which we hope are running just like any other regular person, will kick in and kind of update, modify, or reform those fucked up beliefs so they'll come more in line with, more acceptable, more productive, better ideas in general. Because I think we can all agree that Nick Fuentes got his way, he became dictator of America tomorrow, some really scary stuff would happen. And then I say we need to reckon with the fact that people with disgusting political ideologies can be decent people outside of political context. And people were a little upset with this. And so this was the most popular reply. We need to reckon with the fact that people with disgusting political ideologies can be decent people outside a political context. They're quoting me, and then they have a picture of Hitler. And I think this kind of this shows my point a little bit. And I don't really understand, I don't think Nick Fuentes is Hitler. I'm genuinely here. I don't think Nick Fuentes actually wants to commit a genocide. If he became dictator, I could see him doing a genocide where people are actually erased. They're killed. I shouldn't say that. They're deleted. I can see him doing some forced removals, forced deportations, that kind of thing. But this is kind of what I mean. It's funny that this person responded like this, where this is kind of what I was talking about, where I think it's bad for us to see Nick Fuentes as like literally Hitler. Because I think no matter what, in hindsight, looking at Hitler, if we were to go back in time, you would kill Hitler every time, right? Like if you couldn't do anything else, like if you were sent back to the time with Hitler, you'd kill him. And like what I mean by that, so I can kind of like show what I mean, is if you were to send me back to kill Mussolini and Franco, I'm not entirely sure I would. Because I imagine both those guys, you know, someone could step into that role instead of those guys and do like much worse stuff. Maybe you can make the argument with Mussolini that if Mussolini didn't happen, Hitler wouldn't have happened, whatever. But I'm kind of under the assumption that Hitler would still happen. So, but with Hitler, like, it's like, how much worse could it genuinely get? And I really don't think you could say that. Where with Mussolini and Franco, like, they didn't have, you know, the industrial killing that the Nazis did. But, okay. Basically, I think this guy's kind of proving my point where he's looking at Nick Fuentes and thinking, this guy's literally Hitler. And I think that's just unproductive. And I think, again, it just gives him more credence where he can kind of say, like, look, I'm the only one awake. I'm saying things like they are. And look how scared people are getting of them. Where they can't even, you know, I'm speaking off script. I'm saying stuff the government doesn't like. I'm saying stuff that people don't want to hear. And are literally calling me, like, you know, one of the most crazy genocidal people ever to exist ever. That just doesn't seem good to me. Good stuff. Nick, I just can't believe Surf said that. But I actually can't believe he said that. That's very very it was just very Surfs. Okay. Let's watch this conspiracy, and then we'll watch him. So this was when was this? This wasn't too long ago. Oh, this is just like 3 or 4 days ago, or at least posted 3 or 4 days ago. All right, so this is Destiny, Sneeko, and Nick Fuentes, and they're gonna be talking about conspiracies.
An institution that has hundreds or thousands of individual humans, staffers, congressmen, they're all working together that have contrary interests, that have every motivation. If a Republican or a Democrat thought that the other side was f***ing around or doing other things, all these people have every motivation to expose the other side, but those people are wrong. But you, elected officials, 40s, but just from Peter into the 1980s.
The debate between you two yesterday, especially the comment section, the reflection says that Nick won. Even I did a poll during
so?
it. 60, I mean, I did a poll. 60% of my audience said Nick, even though he's a racist white supremacist. 60% said he won. And the comments right now, they're like, yeah, a lot of them are big Nick supporters. I'm not gonna lie.
Yeah, they're out there.
I won because Destiny's bad faith tactics. He brought him back out again. Me and Destiny. You know, years ago we used to debate viciously, and he would use these kind of like shitty, bad faith tactics.
He just said that to me. He just brought up, we were talking about free speech, and he just brought in like, oh, but you don't know anything about the central banking system. Like, what does that have to do with free speech? That is what it is. It's a good, it works.
Hold on.
Like,
Wait.
And so
to be clear, the reason why I brought that up is because you said that
And so,
libs are information overloaded, and like they're just like taking things without like contextualizing. They don't understand what they're saying, right? And I was showing you. What were you talking about? Information overload.
I'm talking about libs see a bunch of information and they get, and then they're the ones perpetuating the mask, perpetuating the jab. They get manipulated with empathy because of information overload.
Yeah, I agree. And what I'm
the central banking system is not a fair comparison because it doesn't have to. Yes, I don't know everything about the Federal Reserve and the central banking system. I'm trying to learn more.
No,
I'm not too offended by information. Libs are. That's your people. That's not a fair comparison. That was a sneaky rat debate tactic, and I wanted to pull out the rat, but Nick wasn't here.
So
hey,
hold on. So you're not trying to learn anything about the central bank. You're being yanked around just like you say libs are.
No,
That's why I'm
watching these videos. I'm trying to learn more.
That's not teaching you anything about the central bank. It's teaching you conspiracy theories.
Didn't I?
Let's look that up. I bet it is stupid. If Nico's anyone and like anything, like kind of the way some socialists will engage with central banking and banks in general, it's probably not good. Federal Reserve.
I text you earlier today, like I want to learn more. I want to be more high IQ. I want to
No,
be faster.
I understand that, but I'm trying to.
I want to educate myself more.
If I wanted to learn about a topic like the moon landing, would I go on YouTube and look up moon landing conspiracy to learn about the moon landing?
No, I would look at many different sources, and I've already heard what the government says about the moon landing. So now I'm hearing an alternate source.
But you're watching pretty abstract videos about conspiracies related to the Federal Reserve, but you don't even have a basic understanding of what the Federal Reserve is. That's what I'm saying. So I'm saying you're being yanked. What?
It's a private institution that prints money.
How? Why? For what?
For currency.
It just prints money and puts it into the U.S. economy, or what? Like, what's the relationship
To what?
to the U.S. economy? How does the Federal Reserve relate to the? How does the Federal Reserve relate to the U.S. Treasury? How did they decide to print money? Why did they print money? Right?
Tell me.
Well, no, I'm not here to educate you.
That's how much money they want to print. I know that the Supreme Court has a limitation on how much money they can print. And
No,
every
hold
year
on. No. It's not.
increasing a lot.
No. So the Supreme Court doesn't. There's a congressional limit in terms of that gets raised when we talk about the debt ceiling, but that's not a limit on money printed. That's a limit on how much the federal government can
Okay, what's your
borrow
point?
from the
What's your
treasury.
point?
I'm
Why
just
are you
saying that
saying
if you're
this?
trying to get educated on something, then you can go and like literally just read the Wikipedia, but you're not. You're looking for conspiracy videos. And I was hold on. Wait. I'm just hold on. Let me just finish. I'm just pointing. Let me just finish my thing. I'm just pointing out the hypocrisy between you saying liberals are being yanked around and are being confused and frightened by videos when you're literally looking at Federal Reserve videos going, oh my God, 80% of dollars printed in the past 3 years. Like, and you don't even know what like QE is. You don't even know what fucking inflation means. Like, but I'm saying you're being yanked around the same way you're accusing others of being.
It's the change of the value of the dollar.
Change of value how? How do you measure the change? What's the difference between the CPI or the PPP, right? Like, these are all like terms where it's like.
It's in circulation, then inflation goes up.
I'm just saying, I'm saying that you're being.
You're trying to liberal me now because you know more about this stuff.
No,
But what
no.
does that do with liberals getting offended by information?
Hold on. I'm not trying to.
getting offended, and I'm able to have open conversations.
I
Just 'cause
understand.
I'm trying to learn. Has nothing to do with free speech.
Okay.
This is more rat tactics, man.
I'm not trying to lil bro you. I'm not trying to do anything. I'm just saying that if you wanted to learn.
Because, yeah, I mean, if your plan to learn about an institution of the government, and one of the first sources you go to is conspiracy videos about that institution, I mean, what? Like, how is this going to work out for you? Like, this is trying to, like, learn Roman history or Egyptian history, and then going to like ancient aliens and being like, this information is just as valuable as, some documentary, some guy's writing a book or whatever. Is just like, yeah, the Egyptians are people, and they probably wouldn't have been able to build pyramids by themselves because they're people, so they probably needed aliens to help them. You probably want to get a good understanding of what, like, the official, like, even if you assume there's a conspiracy going on or corruption, it's probably good to, like, figure out what's supposed to be going on here. How does this thing describe itself? Basically, how is it supposed to be working? How is it supposed to be functioning if everything is functioning as it should be? And then going from there. Because then I think once you understand it's functioning the way it's supposed to function, if everything's functioning properly, then you'll be able to see all these improprieties or indiscretions or, all these things that don't match up, because then you'll know, like, well, if it's supposed to be working this way and this is going on, then how does that match up with what I understand should be going on? Otherwise, you could just do the conspiracy tactic of saying, this thing's going on, and then saying like, yeah, like the only reason this goes on is because of corruption. And it's like, no, that's actually like kind of how it works. Like, you might think it should be working in another way, but central banking can get like really weird and esoteric pretty quickly. So you can find yourself thinking you're at a conspiracy, and someone can give you a true fact, or like say like this is a really bad thing, and not really expand on why that thing is the way it is, and tell you like this is a source of corruption, and it turns out it really isn't. Like, a lot of central banking interacting with private banking can really appear very weird and strange and corrupt, like, but that's kind of just how it has to work without getting in it and do it. And it's pretty easy to paint that as like our whole banking system is corrupt. Yeah.
About the Federal Reserve, you would like just read the Wikipedia on it. That's it.
No, the Wikipedia is owned by the government now. I will look at multiple sources and then make my own observations.
How do you think Wikipedia is owned by the government?
Yeah, they just bought it. You know that? But you didn't. Oh, did you know that?
Show me where Wikipedia was just bought by the government.
It's insider trading stuff. Maybe I should have said that.
Insider trading? What do you? It's not a Wikipedia's not a publicly traded company.
I heard about that from millionaires who know stuff behind the scenes.
There we go.
Yeah, they just
Okay, well, I can't win on
He
that
said,
ground. Then I just want to know. I'm telling you. Okay, I'm friends with a guy named Peter Thiel, and he told me that it's actually not owned by secret people. Like, I can't.
So the government just bought it out, and also you know that Wikipedia can be edited by anybody, and it does on a regular basis. A lot of the information on Wikipedia is manipulated. You know that.
The whole
Why
point
not
of
just look at Wikipedia and
the whole
decide
point of Wikipedia is that it can be.
You see, and this is also what kind of exposes Sneako's Nick's whole conspiratorial philosophy, or maybe understanding framework, whatever, is much more coherent than Sneako's. Where Sneako, I think he's kind of at that point in his content creator career where he's just kind of. It's sort of like someone who makes drama, makes a big deal about, every little happening. And you'll see this a lot with, hookups. Like I think a good example of this is like how big of a story the Aziz Ansari Me Too thing happened, where really nothing happened. Aziz Ansari made a move. The girl said no. It was a little awkward after that. She left. And that was kind of it. She told someone, and then it turned into, did he force herself on it? Did he force herself onto her, or try some sneaky tactic? And it was no. He made a move. She said no. He respected that. It was a little awkward after, as you might expect, because you thought something was going on and it wasn't. Just as if you were to ask someone out and they said no, it's probably going to be a little awkward after. Doesn't mean anything inappropriate happened. In a vacuum. Obviously, you can ask someone out and it can be inappropriate just because of the context. Like if you're a boss asking out a coworker or an employee or whatever. But I'm not talking about that. And so I think Sneako really wants to find, I'm red pill, so I'm seeing, now that I'm taking the red pill, I'm seeing the Matrix everywhere. But he's not really even seeing the Matrix. He wants to see the Matrix where the Matrix isn't. So it's almost like his perception of reality, even though he says he's red pill and he's seeing things for the way they are, he's really not. He's seeing what he wants to see, and those are things that he can talk about and kind of lambast the system for being controlling or dominating our lives or subverting our happiness in some way or some form. When really it's just this is kind of how things work. We live in a really complicated world, and that complication can really appear like bad things are going on, but it's just it's a complicated process, and that we might not be able to see every step of the way, but maybe the complicated process has to operate in this way, and it's operating well, and it's operated for like this for a long time, and it seems to be working. So there's not anything bad going on, even though it might be so complicated you can't understand it, that it could be easy to see impropriety, corruption, or bad things going on with that complicated process. And so I think it's a little disappointing because Sneako likes to act like he's just asking questions or whatever, but and this is kind of the issue with content creators in general, where, sort of like with journalists. Like, journalists don't want a good story. Journalists want a massacre, because that's a story that everyone will want to read. Some horrible event, some unbelievable event. Because the unbelievable events are usually the tragedies. They're not usually some miracle going on. And I think Sneako is kind of out here looking for those tragedies, because those are much easier to find, or they're much easier to make up. Like the complicated process thing, where you can say, look at this complicated process, this is corruption, this is bad stuff going on. And also, when you're looking at things as being bad, you don't have to be nearly as informed with them. You can kind of almost disregard them. So you can talk about the Federal Reserve, which is an important and complicated institution, and just kind of talk about how it's bad, and it does these things, but it does it improper, and we don't. He can start reading in a bunch of stuff he wants to, because he doesn't care that it's good or it's understood, because his understanding already is that it's bad, and so he doesn't really care that he understands it too much, because he just wants. He's not even talking about reforming it. He's probably at best he's probably talking about just getting rid of it. At best and worst. I guarantee that's his only prescription. He's not talking about this is what we should do, or this is how we should change it. He's just saying wipe the slate clean, which is the most lazy reform you could ever have. Because it's because his understanding is probably that the Federal Reserve does absolutely nothing good and is a wholly bad parasitic institution in the American system. That's too much.
edited by everybody. That's the whole point of any wiki, of course. That's how it's built, yeah. But the edits are monitored by other people as well.
For a conspiracy video, why is that more like? Why is a conspiracy video bad, but Wikipedia?
Because a
good?
conspiracy video is made by one. Because a conspiracy video is made by one person trying to sell you an idea.
One person.
And I also don't understand how people don't understand this. Like, this is how I feel with politicians. Like people always get really like people who get really excited about Trump, and I can kind of understand why people like Trump because he's not a career politician. You know, he was a businessman, so I think a lot of people think like this guy's a businessman. He could continue to be rich, whatever. He's somewhat already famous, so why would he want to become a politician? But I think at the same time, like, how can you hate other politicians so much? And I would hope that you are always distrustful of politicians, because obviously they're probably out for themselves. But I think a lot of people expose themselves or tell on themselves by hating all politicians so much and then loving Trump so much. Because all that makes me think is that you don't necessarily hate politicians. You just don't like the politicians, or all the politicians you've said you hated, you just hate them because you disagree with them. You love politicians. You love Trump. But you're like not applying any of those critiques you had for the other politicians as if like, you know, they're out for themselves, they lie, all the classic kind of negatives of politicians that are just, you know, inherent to politicians. And then you kind of you forget all of that when it comes to Trump because you're just like, no, he's saying exactly what I want him to be saying. So clearly he can't be a politician. And it's like, no, it just so happens he's saying a lot of stuff you agree with. And now you're not reading in those other critiques you had for other politicians that were much more sensible. Now you're like, where at first it was like you're maybe like a little too negative about politicians, and now it's like you're just inconsistent on politicians. Because, you know, before your negativity and your critiques about politicians being hypocrites or liars or whatever, I can understand where you're coming from. I think you're maybe applying it a little too aggressively and thinking that, you know, politicians have like a complicated job, but their constituents obviously have a myriad of different opinions, and they're doing their best to maximize or to create policies that benefit the majority of them, and, you know, maybe doing some policies that kind of benefit them exclusively, but making sure those get obfuscated a little bit with the stuff they're doing to help the majority. And then someone like Trump comes along and you forget all of that kind of potential for corruption, potential for self-aggrandizement, you know, self-motivation for just like your own prestige or whatever. And you say, no, Trump's like, he's the only altruistic human to ever exist. There's like zero selfishness going on. He's doing this all for good reasons. There's no impropriety going on. And I just so happen to agree with him. Like, I just kind of hate that, where there's always going to be sources for people to... There's always going to be motivations for people to do bad things. And I just find it disappointing where someone says, I'm not a part of the mainstream media. I'm a single guy with a YouTube video, and I'm going to tell you the truth. I just hate that so much. Because then you also have to wonder, like with the single guy with the YouTube, if the truth was exactly what the mainstream media was doing, would that guy make any money? Right? Can we think about that? Let's just say let's just say it's for me. I had this YouTube video, and I like to make, and currently right now I'm making conspiracy videos, because I'm telling you the truth. Where the mainstream media, the lamestream media, they're too scared to give you the, you know, the real truth, where I'm telling you the real truth, and it's conspiracy or whatever. And, you know, I'm probably getting a pretty good viewership because I'm telling it like it is. But let's imagine for a second, you know, let's just hypothetical that what the mainstream media is saying, let's just say, is 100% accurate. Now, I'm that same guy who wants to make news on YouTube. How much money am I going to make? Where I'm basically just saying, hey, CNN said this. Isn't that crazy? It's 100% fact. Because I'm trying to tell 100% fact. Or do you think it would be better for me to make up some wild, fun story about the Federal Reserve and how they're cucking us out of, you know, billions of dollars? I would assume that it would be much more attractive for an audience to watch me spin some story about the Federal Reserve and how the U.S. is corrupt or whatever. But, you know, people like Sneeko, I think they like self-motivate, or what they motivated they motivate their reasoning to not seeing that under the guise that they're seeing things for really what they are, but they're just not. And they don't want to see things for what they really are. Because it's much easier to talk about things when you always just assume they're bad, when you assume the worst.
They could edit the Wikipedia.
They could, but millions of people look at Wikipedia. That's the difference.
Okay, but
When I read a Wikipedia article, that's an article that's been edited by an unknown number of people and reviewed by an unknown number of people, right? It could be hundreds, it could be thousands, it could be just one.
the last person who edited it could have manipulated the information.
No,
just
that's
like
not how
the video.
edits work on Wikipedia. On major articles, you can't just make an account and edit and everybody sees it.
There's a lot of edited information every single day. There's
that's-
lots of misinformation that's been proven to be on Wikipedia.
Okay, so here's what I would suggest to you. Go and learn how Wikipedia works. So you don't even know how Wikipedia works, and you're telling me conspiracy about Wikipedia.
People edit Wikipedia. What do I not understand about Wikipedia?
If I were to go to an article right now, you can't just change whatever random information on like major articles and then have it stick and like everybody goes and views it, right? Like they're for major articles, these things go get locked, they're protected. You have to have like people that own the articles, people that like look over the edits. It's not just like everybody can change everything at any point in time and then that's it. Like there's a lot of people. Also, if anything, Wikipedia should be the thing you're championing the most. It's literally a decentralized database of information where everybody can contribute.
Not anymore.
What do you mean not anymore? Yes, it is. It still is. That's why if you go to the page, it's begging for fucking donations. That's why they don't run ads on the pages. That's why they don't have an owner for the company.
The government has a monopoly on the public information online.
No, it doesn't. The government wishes it. Even China can't, and they have literally the massive fucking firewall. What do you mean? You could argue that some private companies might have a
Podcasts with Trump get taken down.
Wait, what?
Why did Nelk's podcast with Trump get deleted if the government doesn't have a monopoly on information online?
Whose podcast?
Right. So him saying that, I really wonder. Because I almost wonder, I actually think that what Sneeko was saying here is actually really misinformed. Like, that's not even sophisticated kind of conspiracy things, right? Like, that's just saying, oh, the government, everything I dislike is the government. Like, it's really unsophisticated. Because then that, like, level of conspiracy, it's really easy to turn on its face. Where you're like, because essentially what Sneeko's saying here is that the government is all powerful, all present, unstoppable. They see a threat and then like their little tentacle shoots down perfectly, zigs and zags past any, possible detection or danger or barrier and just strikes right at the heart of the matter. Instead of there being other independent players that are doing things for their own self-interest, like YouTube removing misinformation that advertisers might have an issue with, because a lot of people who go on YouTube have an issue with that kind of misinformation and would be very upset with YouTube to host those kind of things, to present and allow those kind of ideas to be spread. And some of those people might complain to advertisers who continue to advertise on YouTube where these dangerous ideas are hosted, that these people, the audience of YouTube, don't like being on YouTube. Hopefully that made sense. I felt like kind of got lost in the web a little bit. And Nick's not going to say anything here because I think Nick does he's more sophisticated in his conspiratorial thinking, but it's still at the very end what it comes down to for Nick. And we'll get there. I mean, like for Nick, basically, his kind of whole thing is just kind of like Sneeko, is you start at whatever the thing is, it's bad. So the government says something, we're going to start off, that's false until proven true. And I think we have to be honest with ourselves. In a democracy like the US, most of the information the US government tells its people, like officially, is going to be true, or at least it's going to be as true as far as the government knows. Because the government obviously cares that they tell the truth as much as possible, and people might be like turning to Fauci and COVID, but I think when it comes to something like COVID and the stuff they were saying, like Fauci was saying, is that they were doing their best to shoot in the dark to hopefully get out ahead of stuff for better outcomes. They were making guesses on how things would turn out and making judgments based on that. I think we should all be able to understand that like, hey, the government probably doesn't want people to die of an illness, so it's gonna kind of roll the dice on some safety precautions to hopefully get the best outcome. probably not going to maximize. It's trying to optimize for something. Where like in China, they're maximizing. Where really they're minimizing. They're doing a zero COVID thing. And I don't think the U.S. government ever thought that was possible in a democracy because people would riot, rightfully so, if we were doing what like China's doing with their COVID policy. And so they were saying stuff about masks or saying stuff cleaning your groceries or whatever. I remember that was a thing, and just kind of general health things, health guidelines to help protect you from it, and then to help protect you from COVID. And a lot of those I shouldn't say a lot, but many of those health guidelines turned out to be either like way too much. Like I think it used to be 10 feet apart, and then it became 6 feet apart or whatever. And all those were just done in just a hope that like we don't really know the parameters of this thing. We don't have any information to really justify what we're saying here, but this is our best guess. And I don't think you can really fault them for that. But I think for other things like inflation or how the economy is doing, I think the government for sure is trying to tell you the best they can, because the government doesn't want to lie to businesses and investors, because that's only going to create further issues with the economy.
Nelk and Trump.
I don't know. Why did they say the podcast got taken down?
Because Trump said that in Minecraft, maybe the election was rigged.
And where did it get taken down from?
YouTube.
Okay,
And I think you can see Nick's just thinking like, Sneeko, you're being such an idiot right now. Like, you're really like buttering up. You're giving Destiny some softballs to just crank out of the park easily. He's not even trying. So then when he gets to Nick, he'll already built up all this, juicy credibility. And then Nick's job will be a lot harder to kind of sell his conspiratorial ideas.
And YouTube has what restriction on
misinformation, man?
Conspiracy theories related to election fraud.
I gotta jump in here.
Go for it.
I think here's the issue. Is we're talking about the Federal Reserve, which is one of the most powerful institutions in the world. I think we can all agree on that the chairman of the Federal Reserve and their discretionary jurisdiction over the money supply is an extremely powerful institution. You could also say that big tech, also extremely powerful institutions, Google and the algorithms that control what search results will come up when you enter in a search query on Google. YouTube, extremely powerful, 2.5 billion, 3 billion users, 30 billion monthly visits. And here's the issue. It's not to say that we don't know the nominal reasons behind why they behave the way that they behave. Wikipedia says something about the Federal Reserve. YouTube says they have a reason why they banned Trump. The Federal Reserve says that this is how they operate and this is what it's supposed to be. I don't think anybody is saying that we shouldn't look at what Wikipedia says about the Federal Reserve or whatever. I think the point is that maybe if you want to...
And to be clear, that is exactly what Sneeko was saying. Sneeko was trying to challenge the credibility of Wikipedia, saying that it's not trustful. The government owns it, and Sneeko's already coming from the place of the government basically is always false. And so if the government owns Wikipedia, Wikipedia is false. So Nick's actually just full on wrong there.
Understand the counter argument, or maybe if there's a conspiracy, if there is a deeper truth, you're not gonna find it on Wikipedia. That's the point. If we're saying that YouTube may have banned Donald Trump for a different reason other than what they said was the reason, you wouldn't go to YouTube for that reason. YouTube is not gonna say, well, we really banned him for... If you doubt the authority of Wikipedia, if you doubt the authority of YouTube, if you doubt the authority of the Federal Reserve, then it's obviously self-referential to say, well, we're going to find arguments against their credibility and their authority on their own platform. It just doesn't make sense. So
how is that any less self-referential than your side?
So it turns out, but here's why. Because when you go there and say, well, you watched a YouTube video about it, it's like, okay, well, if the Federal Reserve were engaged in corruption, do you think that it would show up on Wikipedia, or do you think it would be a researcher independent who would post it on YouTube? Exactly. Where else would they distribute the content? And I think the big difference is that...
Can I answer? Yeah, but in both of those scenarios, there's the same incentive. So what Nick just said, because I think what he says there, it makes a lot of sense, and I think a lot of people can buy into that very easily, and I understand that, because what Nick is saying is, so we'll just set up the hypothetical that someone works for some government institution somewhere in the government, and they find impropriety, and then they want to go large with it because they don't trust the mainstream media to distribute it fairly, whatever. So, like they know they have good, solid information that there's impropriety going on in the government, and they kind of want to go out and control the information and control its distribution because they want to make sure that the story is being told the right way and being told as loud as possible. So one way they might want to do that is by going on YouTube, because they can control their messaging, they can protect the information, all this stuff, right? Where if you gave it to CNN, maybe CNN's like, this might be a little too damaging, maybe we don't want to post that, we'll post this, and at the end product that CNN would create is kind of this like abomination of the original news story. So what Nick's saying is that they go on YouTube because they can control their story, they can interact with people, protect the information, all that stuff, right? And I think that's a fair point. But the issue is that he's not giving credence here is that event of someone finding impropriety in the government, having rock solid information of this impropriety, and this impropriety being like a very serious thing that would be worth basically making its way into the news cycle. So, it's not some manager who's a creep and hitting on the women in the office. It's some, shady dealing, like someone in this part of the government's like, hey, I want to hire you to go kill this person because they're a political rival or something like that. Like, sure, like that'd be a really big deal. Or they're like stealing money or whatever. They're lying about what's going on in some situation to change the public's opinion on it. Sure. I think those will all be very newsworthy and all be very realistic ways for if someone had information of that, they might go on YouTube to do that, like Nick is describing. The issue is how often does that happen? Probably not that often. So it makes a lot of sense that someone might say, I have information of what's going on, and let's talk about that. Let's talk about this conspiracy. Because a lot of the time, it's not someone in the government who has this thing of impropriety. It's someone, like me or you, who go on the internet, we watch the news, whatever. Someone told us this, we see that, we hear about this, and then we start forming the conspiracy based on all these separate little sources, not first-hand sources. And then we go on YouTube and spout this conspiracy, and it's really exciting. It gets a lot of views, and I make a lot of money. He's not really giving credence to that because obviously the second one, where it's someone who's picking up a bunch of conspiracies, conspiratorial information from a bunch of different places and crafting a narrative myself to make this coherent conspiracy story, is much more easy and much more likely than that first one of someone being in the government, identifying impropriety, and capturing information that explains and evidences that impropriety, and then spreading it on YouTube. The conspiratory guy who's just creating the narrative is much, much easier to do and much more likely.
Answer that question, or are you just going to ramble past every question? So if the Federal Reserve or some of these federal institutions were engaged in corruption, we've got multiple committees across both the House and the Senate that are in charge of monitoring this stuff. So here's the funny thing.
I'm belittling and
here's the
laughing
funny
at
thing.
you when you say something that's obviously ridiculous
Sure.
by common sense.
So here's the funny thing is that I can give you an institution that has hundreds or thousands of individual humans, staffers, congressmen, they're all working together that have contrary interests, that have every motivation. If a Republican or a Democrat thought that the other side was fucking around or doing other things, all these people have every motivation to expose the other side, but those people are wrong. But you, the guy who's making tens of thousands of dollars selling me a message that the government is corrupt, I'm going to listen to you for government corruption? You who has no oversight, you who has no accountability, you who's not an elected official, you...
Right, and that's the issue, is you basically have nothing to lose. You have everything to gain from you going on, and it could be true conspiracy or fake conspiracy, and either way, you're probably going to benefit. And that's why it's really upsetting that Nick kind of draws this it's a 50-50 shot between these, this person who has real information about the government and its improprieties, and it's just trying to be as good faith as possible and spread the information as wide as possible, and really hopes that we get this this problem solved. Or some guy who wants to make a YouTube video, wants to make money, wants to be famous, and coming up with conspiracies that draw a crowd, are interesting, or fun to go through, and rile people up to just kind of create some narrative story that everyone can go along with. those obviously aren't nearly as likely just based on what we've seen. The conspiracy person is much more likely. And I think we can all understand this, that like when you look at QAnon, what has come of QAnon? Nothing. They keep going along because it's really exciting, you know. Everyone in the government's a pedophile. All this stuff's going on. Trump's going in there, you know. He's going to break up all the pedophiles or whatever and save our government, going to save America. But it's very fun and exciting because it's like a movie. When someone's describing it to you, it sounds like someone's like writing a script for a movie, and they're basically pitching it to you. So hopefully you'll invest in making that movie happen. But it's probably not true.
Who can print whatever message or lie you want, which they have. All of these alternative media pundits have done it over and over again. I'm going to listen to you and take your word for everything. You who thinks the Jews run the government, who can't give me a single shred of evidence for any claim you make, right?
The government never lies. No, nobody ever.
I never said. Did I say?
Straw man. Let me get water.
The government never lies? Did I say the government never lies?
You're implying that the government.
And what's funny is Nick is actually, he does the opposite, where he says the government always lies and never tell the truth. And that's just as ridiculous as saying the government never lies.
Is either unwilling or unable to lie. They're either unwilling or unable to create mass conspiracies because they're working against each other because of checks and balances, and it's such a large-scale organization that deception and subterfuge would be unlikely or impossible. Of course that's not true. Of course the government has been able to betray and lie to the public. They kept the Manhattan Project secret. There was a city of 200,000.
And I think Destiny's line of attack here is fantastic. And I think to kind of go back, why did I bring Twitter over here? This is the real value of Nick, or of Destiny keeping a cordial relationship with Nick, is that again and again he can get these debates with Nick and just shit on his ideas. And it's awesome to see, and I love it so much. Where because Destiny's not trying, at least like in the debate, I should say he's not trying because he isn't. He's really not trying to dunk on Nick. He's not trying to embarrass him. Like, he's trying to embarrass the ideas, kind of, you know what I mean? Like, where he strongly disagrees with those ideas. But this is clearly contentious, so they're both going at each other's ideas pretty hard. Really trying to make those ideas look foolish, stupid, whatever. And I think because Destiny maintains this friendly relationship with Nick, he can get these interactions again and again and again and again. And I think Nick is hoping that he's radicalizing Destiny's audience, but Destiny looks better every single time. And with both these audiences, like, when you think about the kind of ideas Sneeko was saying earlier, that the government owns Wikipedia, which is a wild claim, and so that means everything from there is wrong, when that's clearly not true, and he was just wrong off the bat on that. And we didn't really stick on that. It's like, well, why did you think that? Because you're clearly wrong here. It does a good job of showing, like, these guys are clearly have a very large bias that I think anyone can see. That you always hear an information from this source and assume it's this thing until you get something else. Where you should really be getting it from that source and be thinking, well, what else came from this source? You know, were those true, false, whatever? What incentive do they have to be truthful, not truthful? And then going from there. Except every time they hear something from the government, they just go, well, that's false because it comes from the government. And then it's a poisonous way to interact with the world in general.
People building an atomic bomb, and they kept that a secret for years. Against spies, against the general public, they kept a conspiracy that Franklin Roosevelt was in a fucking wheelchair. And you could say, oh, it was the 40s. and it was a different media environment. But the point is, the government is able to concoct conspiracies. They come up with, they're engaged in information warfare all the time, and they say that. If you read the papers from the Atlantic Council, policy papers.
Let me duplicate this. Dude, I'm trying to argue with this girl about, maybe she's not a girl. Maybe I should be double check that. It is kind of a little anime. Trying to argue with her about the Korean War, and she's not responding to me anymore. Every time in my life this happens. God, it's just so annoying. And I think it's not worth it. I don't want to make a tangent. Back.
From the Atlantic Council or from NATO, or if you read the policy papers that come from the State Department, they talk about narrative warfare. They talk about engaging in information warfare, and they don't describe it in exactly those terms, but they talk about controlling the dominant political consensus, political narrative in the country for purposes of national security and for purposes of diplomacy abroad. So I mean, it's just like, will you acknowledge that the government is able to keep secrents and lie, or do you think that no, they're not able to do that? Really?
Absolutely not. So an individual,
how are you saying that, Dustin? What about the
let me know when I can talk. I'll tell you. Okay.
Go ahead.
So when you want to talk about the Manhattan Project, if you want to compare stuff that we worked on in the 30s and 40s to today, where every single motherfucker has a cell phone in every single room in the United States, those are two entirely different things. At one point in time, was it possible to coordinate a lot of people and keep a secret? Yeah, of course. But today, you've got Iranian nuclear reactors blowing up because viruses are spreading into rooms that aren't even supposed to be connected to the fucking internet, right? That's what stuck.
Yeah, and supposedly the way we did that, I can't feel if like it was a bribe between Mossad, because it was the CIA and the Mossad working together to the Iranians were enriching uranium at this black site or whatever, and this black site they obviously have computers, they're monitoring the machines, controlling machines, whatever, and their idea was we weren't going to control this or we're going to connect this to the internet. And I think it was the way they did it. If they didn't do it through, they bribed someone off to upload the virus, is I think, maybe I should really look that up. I'm just going to say it. So it was either they bribed someone off, which was probably the likely thing, but the more fun one is, I'm being a little conspiratorial here, is they did the classic, they scattered a bunch of USB memory sticks around. And, one of the engineers was an idiot, picked it up, put it in one of his machines. And then it made its way into the reactor room or whatever, even though it was disconnected from the internet. And supposedly, apparently they started playing AC/DC over the speakers while, because like the way the virus worked is it would go to the reactors, the enrichers or whatever you call them, because like the way they work is they spin. They like send the uranium up like really really fast, like spinning it, and they would have it go even faster and faster and faster and faster until like the machine can't. It would redline, and it would stay redlining, and then it would break. And supposedly they were playing AC/DC during that. How do you spell Stuxnet? Stuxnet. Oh wow, it's an X. Stuxnet AC/DC. Yeah. So who knows if this is true? This is from TheVerge.com. Washington Post has it too, actually. Hackers made Iran's nuclear computers blast AC/DC. Iranian nuclear plants are hit by AC/DC virus. Based, dude. That's honestly so awesome. I kind of love that.
Was the idea that today we don't have an unprecedented insight into every single part of the government, into every single fucking person's life is insane. You want to compare it to the 1940s? I've got fucking text messages from Peter Strzok, somebody working on a small council of people working with Mueller to do an investigation. I'm seeing his text messages in front of Congress, and people are mad because they're accusing him of impropriety, right? That's the level of insight that we have today into these organizations. If you want to pretend like we have the same insight now that we did 80 years ago, you're fucking delusional. If you want to ask me 80 years ago, do you think we could have hid large projects from the American public? Yeah, sure, but everybody
Everybody didn't have a 1984 Big Brother cell phone in their pocket to record every single thing. You know this because there's audio leaked of you saying dumb shit that never would have happened in the 30s or 40s, right? Nobody would have known dumb jokes that you made to your friends in the 30s, 40s, 50s, 60s, 70s, 80s, 90s. Nowadays, everybody's got a cell phone in their pocket that's more powerful than the rocket that we sent on the moon, and you're trying to pretend that the information that we have available to us didn't change? That's the dumbest fucking thing I've ever heard of.
Sometimes I think Destiny talks, he's almost overloading them with information. And I think it's good information. And I think he pronounces it very clearly. It's easy to understand what he's saying, but it's almost too much information to like. And he's not gish galloping. He's not even. He's really answering. He's regularly drawing. How do you say that? Like he's regularly bringing in the point they made. You know, establishing this is the point they made, and then saying why it's bad. He's regularly coming in and out. He's not bringing in that point and then building up, you know, just straight without it. He's regularly going up, bringing in their point, answering it, bringing in their point, answering it, and kind of, you know, doing a really good job of iterating through it instead of, because like you'll see with the Demon Mama, like you'll ask her a question, she'll bring that question in, and then she'll just go to the fucking moon talking about something that like barely builds on that question or that idea, and you can just end up in some completely faraway place from where you started.
My life.
Yeah, okay, well, you could talk really fast, but you've just said that you think the government is unable to lie. And I think that is really
oh my God. And so I think this is kind of the issue when Destiny does say so much, it's easy to just be like, well, that was so much, I'm going to not even answer anything because there was just so much there.
Didn't say the government is unable.
But I can understand why he was so frustrated because Nick started this off with a straw man that the government never lies. And Destiny does this big explainer, and then Nick caps off Destiny's explainer by just saying, yeah, the government never lies. You think that.
To lie.
That's literally what you just said. You said that because of modern technology, because of unprecedented insight that didn't exist 80 years ago, now the government is unable to create these large-scale deceptions. That's what I said.
That's what I said. Large-scale deceptions, true.
And once again, you can talk really fast, but that's the crux of the debate. I think the government can lie. You don't think they can. The government has lied. It's been proven. They lied under oath but Congress has oversight. James Clapper is under oath said in a hearing in Congress that the NSA is not engaged in large-scale data collection, and then they were, because Edward Snowden leaked it. Now, you could say, oh, well, the capability of Edward Snowden to leak something proves that government can't keep secrets. What about all the secrets where there isn't an Edward Snowden? They chase Edward Snowden to the ends of the earth.
But I think the important... Is that large scale? A single agency? And that's kind of...
He escaped to Russia, the only country that could give him asylum, effective asylum, where the CIA can't kill him, because Russia's protecting him with the Russian national security apparatus. But and they extradited Julian Assange for publishing those secrets, and they're fucking torturing him on an airplane probably somewhere. So don't tell me, oh, the government can't keep secrets. TWA 800 in 1996 was shot down by a fucking missile. 250 eyewitnesses saw it. They found residue from a missile on wreckage of the plane. And when CBS got a hold of it, the feds came in and said, that's evidence, we're confiscating it, and by the way, you're going to jail for taking a piece of evidence away from a crime scene. And then all the news media aired an animation which was created by the government that said, oh, all those 250 people that said it was a missile, what they really saw was the plane exploding and falling down. It was an optical illusion. And then it just went away. But it's well documented that, and there's a million things like that. The OK City bombing, the JFK assassination, 9/11, all day long.
Well, all of those things were conspiracies. All of those things.
Yeah, I'd like to. How does he think that about the OKC bombing? What do you think? What does he think that was? Like, how would that even benefit the American government to do? And the OKC bombing was pretty horrific. I think it'll just show it won't show anything crazy. It'll just show the building. Yeah, so this guy packed like a small truck, like, you know, like the 18-wheelers, you know, it's got the what the hell do you call that? Like the load in the back. I forget the trailer. So it's one of those that's like much smaller, kind of like a U-Haul. He like filled it with explosives and blew it up. There was like some office here or whatever, but really shitty is there was also a daycare. And supposedly the guy did it because of Ruby Ridge. The Ruby Ridge was some dude, I forget, something ATF fucked it up. But I'd like to hear what he says. Like, why would the government do this? What do they have the benefit? Maybe I'll look into that after this.
For fake, the 9/11, the JFK.
100%.
I'm curious. Do you
And it's funny that so Nick says that, and he says it so confidently, like obviously the government did 9/11, but then they're going to talk about it here, and it's not nearly. He's not nearly as confident in person. I think that's the beauty of talking to people in person. It's much harder to bullshit someone straight-faced in person than it is over stream.
Do you think we landed on the moon? I'm trying to get a gauge of where we're at here. Do you think that was the thing that happened?
The pyramids were built by aliens. Let me gauge your perception of reality.
I don't know. I haven't researched.
I don't think we did.
You don't.
And so that's also something I hate is that this is kind of the Andrew Tate thing where Hassan blew him out. Where Andrew Tate said that I know the things I know because I've witnessed them. I've observed them myself. Anything outside of that my ability to observe it, I don't trust it. I don't believe it. Studies, whatever, scientific data, I can't observe it. Can't trust it. And Hassan said, well, is the earth flat? And I think Andrew Tate not being... I honestly think at that point in the debate where Hassan asked Andrew Tate, do you think the earth is flat? I think Andrew Tate was like, I think he could have gone either way. He was 50-50. And I think he just took a chance. He's like, I think me saying the earth isn't flat will look better for me. And he said that, and Hassan just naturally said, well, how do you know that? Have you been to space? Andrew Tate hasn't been to space, and just kind of like, it was funny because I felt like Hassan was actually being so gentle too. It was just kind of giving him some little hard pokes, and it was pretty easy to see how much Andrew Tate's kind of whole framework for reality, framework for how he arrives to truth is just being so wobbly, so fragile. That's kind of how it feels here, where you're going to say you don't know something because you haven't researched it. But that's obviously just such bullshit because no one has time to research everything. At some point, you have to just trust people are giving you at least, I'll just say valuable information. I won't even say good information, but the information they're giving you is valuable. For him to say that is just, it's useless because obviously no one can operate on that. Because your life would just be hell if you were to actually say, I actually don't know about this because I haven't looked into it. Where if you really start at that, I'm going to be overly cautious because I don't actually know. Obviously no one operates like that.
Okay, so neither of you have strong opinions. I already know Nick doesn't think dinosaurs are real, right?
Well, I don't know. I'm not an archaeologist, but I don't know. I don't know if I believe that.
And that's a perfect question by Destiny to ask. Just really set up this is the kind of person we're dealing with here.
100%. I've said I've joked.
We are getting an odd.
Hold on, Destiny. It's pretty stupid to just debunk all of this by saying it's crazy conspiracy theorists. When we really look into all this stuff, it's pretty obvious that the government.
And I just hate that when you look into all this stuff. What is all this stuff? How have you looked into it? So before you were talking about looking at the Federal Reserve, you're talking about watching YouTube videos, conspiracy YouTube videos about it. You don't understand how the Federal Reserve is supposed to work. So before you even have that understanding of what's supposed to be happening, you're already looking at stuff that's impropriety. You have to build that foundation of what are things supposed to, how are they supposed to be working, and then you can move on to where things are not working on as how they're. You figure out how things are supposed to be working, and then you move on to finding things that are not working as they should be.
Has been mass deceiving people for decades.
You might get a department in the government that tries to be deceitful. You might get people.
The government is the government.
You just don't know what you're talking about when you say that.
The government is comprised of 3 different branches, and under each of these, well, except for the Supreme Court, there are tons of different agencies that operate with a ton of different ways, right? So there's, hold on, you have to understand, there's a difference between saying the FBI or the NSA.
Also, how is Seagal's mic so bad? I feel like it always tops out. I mean, I'm also not. Maybe my mic would do the same if I was just sitting in my room here, just yelling. Because I do feel like that's kind of his, which I can appreciate. Because I'm a big yeller too. Whenever I get excited, so maybe once I start yelling, I get excited more and I start yelling. Maybe that's what'll happen.
Is keeping a secret versus the entire government is keeping a secret. These two things.
Government.
All the same. They're part of the same system.
Hold on.
Unbelievable.
I gotta think for a second on how, because if you just don't know, I don't even know how to bridge that to you.
The NSA is not part of the government?
Do you think that the entire government keeping a secret is the same thing as the NSA keeping a secret?
The NSA is part of the government.
Hold on. What's up, handsome? Bring up these texts so I can just answer them real quick. Because they kind of bloviate here for a second. Or I should say Nick does. Hold on, let me go to the bathroom. Sorry. Oh, I should have silenced my mic, huh? All right. I kind of forgot where we're at, but guns away.
Can you answer that question? Do you think the entire government keeping a secret is the same thing as the NSA keeping a secret?
Obviously not, but that's not what we're
Okay,
claiming.
that is what
Yeah, that's what he's saying.
we're talking about then.
We're not.
Every different part of the government knowing something and all of them coordinating to keep a secret is different than one department keeping a secret or people in a department keeping a secret. That's the whole reason why most of these conspiracy theories, that's why these conspiracy theories generally fall apart, is because usually they require the coordination of hundreds or thousands or tens of thousands of people across different agencies, sometimes across different countries. That's a lot different than a few people in the NSA keeping a secret. Fundamentally, if you want to come here and tell me, if you want to come here and you want to tell me,
How is
hey,
this mic?
I think that the NSA or
Sneeko wasn't yelling there. How was his mic so bad? It was
different countries. That's a lot different than
right. So he's on speaker for a second, and even then, I think it's topping out. His mic has to just be like really messed up. Can you just mess up your mic by like yelling a lot? Because he does yell a lot.
a few people in the NSA keeping a secret. Fundamentally, if you want to come here and tell me, if you want to come here and you want to tell me, hey, I think that the NSA or the CIA or the FBI, I think that they have a secret or they're keeping a secret from the American people or whatever. That's possible. The CIA, the CIA for sure, the NSA for sure, the FBI for sure. But if you want to come and you want to say something like all of the intelligence agencies together and Congress have come together and they're keeping secrets, that just shows that you have a fundamental misunderstanding of how any of the government operates. And I would encourage you to talk to anybody that's actually held a job or at least a fucking security clearance for any of these places because they don't cooperate.
I got people jobs in
That
the
people don't-
administration. The guy in the State Department recommended this.
That's
book to
great,
me.
nice.
Show people all
These
around the
agencies do not have that level of cooperation or penetration.
What book was that?
got people jobs in
That
the
people don't-
administration. The guy.
Is that supposed to be like some like really well-known book? It's like I don't know. I can't even make out what that top word is. We'll talk about that. Do a little book. Oh, we wanted. Damn, no nerds in the comments.
The State Department recommended this.
That's
book to
great,
me.
nice.
Show people all
These
around the
agencies
government.
do not have that level of cooperation or penetration into the other agencies. It's fundamentally just not how they operate.
First of all, you need to take the red pill. Second of all, here's the thing.
Good advice.
Okay, first of all, you start by saying, "Oh,
I mean, just like maybe I am because I clearly am much closer to Destiny's worldview and political ideology, and I just at this point to me, I mean, it'd be interesting to ask someone like the Serfs or someone who like this guy. Wait for it. Yeah, I saw this when we were watching it. This guy said, better ideas aren't always the most convincing ones. This is obvious. And the omni-liberal, if you know who that is, if you think this, you don't belong in advocacy. Stay off the internet and stay in your lane. Stop trying to fuck it up for the people who haven't lost faith in humanity. You aren't actively making the world a worse. You are actively making the world a worse place for everyone to live in. Honestly, so based. I 100% agree. Like, I wonder how he feels this conversation is going. Because I think at the very worst, at the very worst, the most you can say is Destiny is like they're even, right? The neutral effect. But I think here it's just, I mean, Sneeko has to almost just take a back seat. 'Cause he just looked like such an idiot. But I mean, obviously, I'm probably biased towards. I just don't like when someone brings up conspiracy. I don't hate when someone brings up one conspiracy, but when someone's just like everything's a conspiracy, it's just like, yeah, that's obviously not true. Like, and if you believe that, well, like I just don't under. Like we honestly, if the government could do that, we would live in such a good world because then we could just have a command economy. Everyone would live perfectly. The government would figure out all the little numbers. They'd run the simulations, and they'd be like, "This is how many cars you need. This is how much meat you need per week. This is how much milk you need. This is how much cereal. This is how much bread." They'd work it all out. They're like, "Yeah, we'll hook you up with a gym membership. You'll go to this bullshit job. You know, the job will be pointless and meaningless, but you'll enjoy it, kind of. You'll find a community there, and everything else will work out." But obviously, the government can't do that because, you know, and Nick even talks about this, how a small group, relatively small group of people, if highly motivated, and I'll just say highly motivated, can achieve huge, disproportionate effects than you think a group of that size would be able to do. And I think that's kind of the whole thing with conspiracy theories is they overlook these smaller groups or these smaller factors because they think it has to be something with like such a pronounced impact has to have, you know, an equal sized like entity or force applying, or some entity applying some force that, you know, will very intuitively, very obviously have this very outsized impact. And the example I've always heard to kind of to illustrate that is JFK was assassinated, right? And that's like the most, like, or after 9/11 and the moon landing, that's like one of the biggest conspiracies that people love to go on and on and on and on and on about. You know, there's a million different theories. There's all these things: magic bullet, another shooter, all this crazy stuff. The mob's involved, the CIA is involved. And, you know, whatever the government said is obviously not correct, right? It can't be correct. But then, because it had such a big impact. I mean, a U.S. president was assassinated. It's a big deal. And, you know, he was a younger guy. He was early in his, you know, still had a lot of ways to go in his presidency. You know, could have got a lot done. He was very idealistic, all this stuff. But then another assassination attempt that's not talked about is Ronald Reagan. And it's interesting to think about where if Ronald Reagan were to have been assassinated, we'd probably talk about that all the time because Ronald Reagan, you know, he was pivotal in our relationship, the U.S.'s relationship with the USSR and the course of the Cold War, where it really after, you know, during Reagan, and it was probably happening before him, but with Reagan and Gorbachev, it really felt like the USSR is unhealthy. And I don't mean necessarily like they're a bad society. I just mean like the system itself doesn't really seem to have like that vigor, that enthusiasm, that it just doesn't seem like it has that to really even, it doesn't have whatever it takes to keep up with the US, but, you know, much less surpass it or be its better or dominate the US. It felt like the system seems like it's barely holding together. And like Reagan seemed like it had a big part to do with that. So if Reagan had been assassinated, I think it'd be very easy to say like the Soviets had something to do with it, or, you know, some liberal because he was like very Christian right, or, you know, maybe he would have been assassinated because he wasn't, you know, Christian enough, all this stuff. But the thing is Reagan didn't die in his assassination attempt. They stopped the assassin. I think Reagan got shot, but he didn't die from the bullet. And so it's not really a story. There was no big impact. You know, it's an interesting little factoid, but really the impact of that assassination attempt wasn't much. Where the impact of the JFK assassination was huge. You know, this guy died. He was the president. He was very idealistic. You know, he seemed like he was doing a lot. He was going to do a lot. So it's, you know, it's very tempting to assume that since the impact was so big, that the cause, you know, it's the cause and effect. That if the effect was so big, that the cause had to be really big. It couldn't just be, you know, one nutcase who was like, I'm going to kill the president. It had to be more than that. And I think that's fundamentally what Nick overlooks, even though he really shouldn't. because he regularly understands and talks about the idea of having a small group of highly motivated people having a big impact.
The government, and you said this, the government is not capable in the modern technological era of large-scale deception. Now you're saying, well, saying the whole government, that's different than saying a part of the government, like the intelligence part of the government, which would be tasked with doing that. It's just ridiculous. I mean, what are you even arguing? What's even the point of all this? Are you arguing for the sake of arguing or what?
I'll repeat it for you since you didn't understand. I'll speak slowly this time, okay? Saying that the government is capable of selling a conspiracy theory implies a level of coordination that doesn't exist. And if you talk to anybody that's ever held a government job, they'll tell you that. Yeah, we don't have that level of coordination. If you want to tell me an individual agency might be keeping secrets or acting improperly, yeah, that's more believable. That's just common sense. Much the same that if you tell me an entire school is trying to keep a secret, that's going to be a lot different than two teachers having an affair and keeping it a secret. Do you understand that analogy?
Oh, yeah. That's a really salient, that's a really nuanced position. Because when we were saying the government conspires, you said, that's bullshit. Oh, you meant the NSA can keep secrets? Oh, well, yeah, that's totally legit. So, whatever. You think...
I don't know. Maybe he's not being that fake. Maybe he's actually just misunderstanding. But... it doesn't look good, in my opinion.
I think that the NSA can keep secrets then, right? And the FBI and the CIA.
Well, they're intelligence agencies, so necessarily they keep secrets. It's vital to the function of the departments, of course.
Okay.
So the NSA
hang on.
So people.
What would you have to say then about something like? What would you have to say about Operation Northwoods as an example?
For any individual.
Okay, I actually looked into this, and I kind of wonder about this. Because this does look bad. Operation Northwoods. Let's go right to the Wikipedia, even though they're owned by the government. I don't know why the government would have released this on Wikipedia. All right, I'll just keep that on screen. But I'm going to give you the wiki notes. So essentially, when Cuba went full communist with Fidel, they had the revolution, overthrew Bastia, whatever his name was, and they, went communist. Were being real friendly with the USSR, and the U.S. government was kind of wondering, like, how are we gonna deal with this? They did the Bay of Pigs. That was a disaster. But the U.S. wasn't sure it wanted to leave it at that. And I think one thing to keep in mind is the U.S., if they wanted to, could have crushed Cuba. I'm not saying they could have done it efficiently or like with minimal losses, but it was one of those things where it's sort of like France taking over Corsica. The Genoese might not be able to hold Corsica, but the French obviously could with their might en masse. And I think this is kind of a similar case with the U.S. and Cuba. But unlike in the time of French in Corsica, the U.S. couldn't just go, yeah, we're going to take over this shit just because we want to take over it for conquest. This is the way it's going to work. Kind of needed a little bit more reason in the more modern day. And one of those things they came up with to give justification for an invasion, to overthrow, conquer, whatever, Cuba, was this proposal called Operation Northwoods, in which essentially the government, the intelligence agencies, and the U.S. military would stage these events that would be terrorist attacks, these disruptions, all these kind of, attack-like events that conceivably Cuba might want to do to disrupt the operation of U.S. society, civilization, government. Except that the U.S. would be doing it and then blaming Cuba, saying, why are you guys doing this? It was rejected by Kennedy. And I'll be honest, it doesn't look good. I'm an American. I wouldn't want America to do stuff. This is shameful, I think. But I think one thing to keep in mind here is, although this made it to the Joint Chief of Staff, and he authorized it, gave notes, and then it got to Kennedy, and Kennedy said no. So ostensibly, if Kennedy had said yeah, this would have gone ahead. The questions I have is, how many proposals does Kennedy see? Because if we were to say he sees like 100 proposals like this a day, I think it's fair to say that you would expect stuff like this from the military to get to Kennedy. And I mean stuff like this is like stuff that seems a little off the reservation. Seems a little nuts. Because from my understanding is the military, like, they're always coming up with plans and operations, because a big part of the military is to kind of basically just you never want to have an event where it turns out your enemy has this big advantage on you that you didn't foresee at all. They just had this advantage, and they're dominating you with this advantage that you just never foresaw and don't know how to counter, right? And we've seen this again and again. Back to French Corsica, Napoleon was Corsican. Napoleon introduced tactics that the rest of the great powers in Europe had just such difficulty countering or dealing with. And maybe even better one is the Nazi Germany, the Germans in World War II. Their tactics and using their tanks and their ways to maneuver them and organize them was, I mean, if not revolutionary, was close to being revolutionary. And that's why they were able to overrun places like France in like 6 weeks. They just went around the Maginot Line, and France just had really no answer to that advantage. So a big part of the military is to always be preparing for what you may not know. And the kind of whole idea is there's things you know, there's things you know, there's things you know you don't know, there's things you don't know you know, and there's things you don't know you don't know. And so the whole idea is, how do we find as much stuff? Because it's very easy to, you know the stuff you know. That's easy to do. That's easy to contend with. But there's also stuff you don't know. And that's kind of easy to contend with too, because then you can easily direct forces or resources towards that. Things you don't know, that's not too bad, and hopefully you can try to illustrate that. But the really scary things are the things you don't know that you don't know. And that's a really scary thing, because if advantage comes out of that from an enemy, you're going to be in a really, really bad spot. And so one way you can try to hopefully discover is those things you don't know, is you essentially try to plan for every situation, even if it feels wacky. And in business, we kind of call this, it's called SWOT, where you examine your weaknesses, your strength, or your strengths, your weaknesses, your opportunities, and your threats. This obviously would be a threat. And it can be really hard to identify threats, because threats can take an almost infinite number of possibilities. It might be easy to be like, hey, this might be a threat, but it's going to be really hard to see how that threat manifests into a real weakness. And so, so it might make sense for the military to come up with a horrible, terrible plan like Operation Northwoods. But it also could be that in their attempt to kind of just lay out, let's get every plan we know, let's not constrain ourselves to what we think are good ideas and bad ideas. Let's come up with every idea and really flesh it out. Because we want to make sure that we can unlock as many of those unknowns as possible. And I think a good example of that is the Pentagon. They have an actual plan for a zombie apocalypse. And this might seem like a waste of time, but this is a good way to get it, to hopefully, unlock a perspective in which you can discover you can get to know some of those unknown unknowns. Because when you're talking about a zombie apocalypse, even though, as far as we know. It's an impossible event. Zombies aren't real. They never will be real. But kind of like in math, when you'll use imaginary numbers that don't exist or are impossible, that help you deal with real numbers, I think it's kind of like this, where you're dealing with an impossible situation that forces you to look. It forces you to view this thing in a perspective that, even though it might not exist in reality, it'll give you a unique perspective because the situation is so unique, even though it's an impossible situation. You understand what I'm saying? And that's kind of how I would hope Operation like Northwoods would come out, and that it wasn't really meant to be approved by Kennedy. Although I don't think that's really true. I think they actually wanted this to be approved because a big reason why they think Kennedy might have been assassinated by the CIA or whatever is that then there was another proposal called Mongoose, which was pretty similar. It was like pretty much the same thing. There's like some things that were a little bit different, and Kennedy rejected this one too. Or maybe this one was never submitted. That's kind of what I would hope. Like if Kennedy did approve this, I would hope it still wouldn't have gone forward. Or at least my hope is that something like this is an evil plan. The way it came about is from the military trying to think, like allowing themselves to get outside, think outside the box and, think of like a zombie apocalypse, think of, committing terrorist attacks on the U.S. citizenry, a group of people who you should be protecting.
Individual thing that you want to bring up, I would have to dig into it because I wouldn't trust your take on it because you're going to probably give me the one-sided thing.
That is? Wait,
I have no idea. I have no idea.
Okay, so you don't even know. You haven't even looked into it.
I just hate that idea where you can't.
Right?
No.
I mean, it's a good point, but I feel like Nick has tainted that because you say anything. Nick just has this belief where you can't know anything unless you've looked into it, which no one operates that in a practical. No one. It's just not a practical ideology. It's not a practical philosophy to go throughout your life.
Oh, do you want to do it? Do you want to do it right now? We can if you want.
Wait, the reason why I'm asking is because you're going to sit here and say
1962, dog.
Yeah.
Can you give me something in the past 2 decades?
And that's a good point too. Is I think and you'll see this a lot with socialists is they'll talk about like the invasion of Haiti. Because that was really bad. Or like the invasion of Guatemala with the bananas. And all that stuff's really, really bad. And I agree, it's really bad. But they kind of, a lot of the socialists that I'll see talk about it, they kind of almost make it sound like this is an essential part of the U.S. Like I just hate it because it's like the U.S. is irredeemable. And that stuff's always kind of really disappointing to me because then you're kind of saying I think it just really gives credence to the idea that people can be irredeemable, and I don't believe in that. Like I think people can be reformed, can be reintegrated into society in a much healthier way, in which in contrast to the form in which they were taken out, because you're a criminal, you're acting in society in an unhealthy way. That's why you get removed. And I think every system's reformable. And I think a lot of people, if you were to bring this up to a socialist, they'd be like, oh, so you think Nazi Germany is reformable? And I would say no, but also like the Nazi Germany, they don't exist anymore. So there's no point in trying to reinstitute that whole kind of government and then, fix it when we can just leave it in the past and work with the German government as it is today, right? But, yeah.
Well,
Cell phones have been invented.
Hang on. Here's my ask before you do your usual tactic of if I just interrupt and interject. Right. Let me explain my point.
And so this is what I'm going to let this run for a little bit because I feel like I'm really pausing it out. Earlier, earlier here, I was admiring Destiny's ability to engage with Nick without, turning off the kind of, fun, light atmosphere. He's able to push back on his ideas while keeping it light. And I think that's really effective because it takes away Nick's, it takes away that out for Nick to be like, whoa, like, why are you getting all like so upset about this, or whatever he might say. Because that's kind of what Nick's doing here, where he kind of keeps doing this like straw man of Destiny, of being like, you're being uncharitable, you're doing all these like little things, like you're doing these tactics, they're underhanded, all these things. And I don't think Destiny is doing that, or at least not to the level that it's worth for Nick to point it out like this, because it's clearly not that bad. And I think Destiny's trying to engage with what Nick's saying. He's obviously very hostile to what he's saying, but to be fair, Nick's also very hostile for what Destiny's saying. So I don't think Destiny's off his rocker for reacting the way he is. But Nick, for whatever reason, wants to keep bringing up again and again how Destiny is acting in a bad way in this discussion. And I think he's doing that. And I think what Nick is doing, where he's trying to point out Destiny being underhanded, I think Nick is being underhanded.
Because it's important. Oh yeah,
are you gonna tell me like some shit that Paul Revere was cooking up next to like fucking? Yeah.
That's funny because historical. No, you're gonna keep interjecting because you're the guy that doesn't know what the fuck you're talking about. You're gonna sit there. And say,
you're right. I don't know every single proposed false flag in 1962. I don't. Tell me about your esoteric conspiracy theories. Go for it.
You're not even curious. Because you're not even curious because you will read Wikipedia and say I trust every.
That's always a classic thing where, if you don't believe in conspiracies, it's because you're not curious. You're not willing. You're not open-minded. You're a robot. You get told what to believe and you believe it. Because there's no way that you could ever believe in. You could deny what they're saying. Because it's just so funny that Nick espouses. That's what I really don't think people appreciate, that like Nick looks really bad in this conversation. He does, because he's again and again attacking Destiny for, supposedly acting this way in discussions, in debates, or having this kind of general framework for engaging in how he takes in information and arrives at conclusions. But that's what Nick is doing. Because Nick is saying that he doesn't believe anything unless he researches it. And as he described earlier, at default, he distrusts the government. Where Destiny's not saying that. Destiny's saying that, like, there's a track record of something. What are the incentives? What's the possibility of something, being the way it is? And then you kind of operate from there. Like, you don't have to research everything. You just kind of have to understand the incentives, the probabilities, the chances. And also, like, not to Nick's point, but there'd be a lot of incentive to be a whistleblower. You become pretty famous pretty quickly, like Snowden was. And I think a lot of people would love that kind of celebrity they would get from being a whistleblower. But Nick, of course, is just saying that, like, Destiny's being the robot by just blindly believing whatever the government believes. And Destiny's not saying that. Destiny's just saying, like, hey, the incentives seem to line up. So, like, kind of like almost like a probabilistic thing where it's like, yeah, like, I have 75% faith that the government's probably telling the truth, where Nick is almost always at a 0. And that's like much more of like a robot kind of thinking, where you're just saying it's always 0. Like, that's even more biased because that's obviously unreasonable. But Nick obviously doesn't want to accept that, so he's saying that's what Destiny's position is.
Everything the government says, the government never
Wikipedia
lies.
is not the government. Wikipedia is not the government, Nick. Do you know the difference between the Wikipedia and the government?
Destiny. There's a meaningful distinction between Silicon Valley and the government. Mm-hmm.
Silicon Valley doesn't edit Wikipedia. That's not.
Oh yeah, and Silicon Valley doesn't work with the intelligence agencies.
I never said Silicon
doesn't get their biggest contracts.
Oh
from
yeah.
the intelligence
Do you remember
agencies.
when the FBI was groveling to Apple for backdoors on their devices? Man, what a close relationship those two entities have.
Right.
Oh my God, dude, these guys get along like peas in a pod. Absolutely, dude.
Yeah, there's
okay.
definitely not an iron triangle between the Ivy League universities, Silicon Valley, and the intelligence agencies to create
To create Wikipedia. They all work together on Wikipedia. Mark Zuckerberg actually edited this article on Operation Northwoods. I'm looking right now. These edits are by Zuckerberg. Oh, and Bezos did the paragraph right down here too.
There's no collusion between the private and public sector, because I could say that you think Mark Zuckerberg edited Wikipedia? No, I think that.
And Destiny's not even saying that. But what Fuentes is saying is that it's basically either steeped or almost all collusion, which is obviously ridiculous. And so to defend his ridiculous position, he makes Destiny's position out to be ridiculous.
There's conspicuous collusion between Silicon Valley and the intelligence agencies.
Talk to me about you brought up Operation Northwoods. Talk to me about Operation Northwoods.
I will.
Yeah, let's hear it.
Perfect example. That's a perfect example. Declassified CIA plan to conduct false flag attacks across the country, blame them on Cuba, to create a popular support for a U.S. war in Cuba. That is something that the U.S. Joint Chief of Staff supported and offered to the president, as well as many other military personnel, was shut down and declassified however many years later, 40, 50 years later. It's an example of the fact that if that kind of thing is being presented, Operation Northwoods, Operation Mockingbird, MK Ultra, Project Paperclip, these are things which, if they're being cooked up by the government, by the highest level people in the government, conspiracies and particularly false flags, if they're being written and presented by the government and declassified, it demonstrates two things: willingness and ability. They're willing to do these kinds of things, and they have the capability to carry them out. And if that's the case, that destroys the benefit of the doubt, because you said, well, I haven't looked into the conspiracies, but I don't think that they can happen because it would not be logistically possible, because you never could get that level of scale of personnel to conspire in government, because thousands of people, smartphones, cameras, people can see everything.
And as we know from looking at the Wikipedia, they didn't do it, so we don't actually know if they have the ability to do it. Just like the Bay of Pigs. The Bay of Pigs was a failure. It's not like everything the military does is a success. So this could have been a failure, proving Destiny's point that the government doesn't have the ability to do these widespread, large-scale conspiracies.
Yeah,
but
do you recognize
both the willingness and the capability, then that destroys that benefit of the doubt. Then we have to recognize and evaluate that.
Do you recognize that there's a difference between the willingness of a body to conduct foreign warfare in Cuba versus conducting it on people in the United States?
Yes.
So why is Operation Northwoods your go-to here?
Well, again, they're talking about false flags against Americans in America to blame on Cuba.
And then, was this ever carried out?
No. It was presented to the president by the Joint Chief of Staff, and JFK said, no, we call ourselves humans. That's the quote.
Okay, so my original thing that I said was that I think that the United States has too many different human people in it that wouldn't let things like this ideally happen. Or if it did, hopefully somebody would expose it. You're giving me an example of a plan that was cooked up by one of our intelligence agencies, brought to the president, and then the president shot it down because he's a human that didn't think he wanted to see that happen in the United States. Isn't this just a story that proves my point?
No, it does not, because it demonstrates that intelligence agencies are thinking like this. I'm sure
they're thinking of a lot of things, but the goal is, at the end of the day, hopefully, they're not doing atrocious things because they have some level of oversight from different branches of government. And you're telling me telling me that the president shot this plan down, that these false flags didn't happen.
And then let me ask you a question. What happened to Jack Kennedy then in 1963?
And he was assassinated by the intelligence.
Well, why does Nick call him Jack? Why not John? It just seems weird to me. Is that like a thing? Why do people call John Kennedy Jack? Okay, yeah, you're just gonna give me the... Why do people call William Bill? So he's just doing that as his own little flair. He's tight with John JFK.
Intelligence agencies. You have no proof or evidence for, but it's
right.
Well, who was it? Who do you think 9/11 was? That Bush's or was it?
Let me say this. Mm-hmm. So Jack Kennedy gets killed.
Yep.
His brother, who's the Attorney General, his brother says this. He never believed that JFK was killed. And this has been reported in all kinds of biographies of people that knew RFK. He never believed that Jack Kennedy was killed by a lone gunman. Because, when that movie JFK by Oliver Stone, that is all based on a real story. The main character is played by Kevin Costner. That was a real guy in New Orleans. And the theory about the magic bullet, where you get a bullet that enters and exits 7 times. One bullet enters and exits a couple of people.
Do you want to do? Do you want to do a formal? Do you want to do? Do you want to? Well, hold on. I'm not ready to dive into JFK conspiracy theory.
Well,
do you want to set up? Do you want to set up? No, because every time you it is the point. If you want to do an organized, if you want to do an,
I mean, yeah, Nick is dropping like these facts on him. Like, yeah, obviously he can't. Like, what's the argument? You're obviously going to bring up all the things that you think are so ridiculous, then that could all just be meaningless bullshit.
organized conversation on the JFK assassination. We can do that. Would you like to set one of those up? We can schedule it right now if you want to.
Absolutely.
Okay, hold on. Wait, give me a time and a date.
Let's do September. I don't know. When do you want to do in September?
Whenever you want, a time and a date on
I'll be in
it.
Florida all week. Let's do.
Oh, in person?
No, it'll be an online debate. We can go over the. What?
Do it tomorrow.
Let's do. I can't. I'm flying to Florida tomorrow. Let's do September 1st.
Also,
How's that?
fitting that you're wearing a red shirt and Destiny's wearing a blue.
Nice.
Yes,
That's what I go for.
red pill.
Wait, hold on. Wait. What was the time of the day?
Let's do Thursday evening. How about Thursday, 8 o'clock Central?
On when?
September 1st.
I'm gonna be in LA.
Bruh. Okay, well, then you give me a date then.
Um,
Mr. Bon Vivant.
We can do.
Hold on. Active Measures donate 5 and said Destiny can't comprehend how they are contractually bound to not leak classified information or they can be ran out of the country like Snowden.
There are oversight agencies for every single intelligence agency that exists that do have access into these organizations to vet them. If you think every single person who, hold on, don't distract me from this. The 6th or the 7th at a certain time. What time?
Of September?
Yeah.
6th or the 7th? Okay, let's do the 6th at 8 Central. I'm writing it down on my calendar.
6 o'clock, the 6th at 8 Central. Is that 9 o'clock my time?
Yes.
Okay, and your thesis for this, you think you can prove to me that JFK, the assassination, the official story is a lie. Not that you can raise some questions, but you think you've got... Okay, cool. I got it on my calendar.
The Warren Commission is bullshit.
Okay.
And that Lee Harvey Oswald did not act alone. And I was getting to an interesting point. So the Attorney General, JFK's brother, never believed the official story. He goes and he was basically sidelined. Lyndon Johnson hated RFK. He becomes president. Hoover, who is the FBI director, he stayed in. He was supposed to go under Jack Kennedy, and they basically sidelined RFK. RFK then, after Lyndon Johnson is set to lose in 68, Lyndon Johnson steps aside. RFK announces he's running. RFK wins the California winner-take-all primary. He's set to become the nominee and then the president, and then RFK is assassinated by Sirhan Sirhan. Sirhan Sirhan comes up with him, Palestinian, and shoots him with a gun with 6 bullets. 8 bullets are fired. 2 of them in the back of RFK's head. One problem, Sirhan Sirhan came at him with a 6-shot gun from the front. And it's like, and that's in the police report. These are things that are going on. And all I'm saying to you, Destiny, this is why I didn't want to get too much into the weeds, because you don't have to take my word for it and believe it. The point is, there is enough out there where we can't rely on the benefit of the doubt and say, oh, the government can't conspire.
I mean, would it be so wild that he, like, the guy shoots him, RFK's on the ground, and I assume it's a revolver, which can be like kind of taxing the reload, and he just dumps the shells, puts in 2 more, right? Because he didn't want to fill the whole thing, double tap back at the head, and then he deuced. Why is that? Why is that crazy?
Fire. So
I don't know. I'm actually pumped to see that. That'll be a fun little... Because I always see the JFK, RFK thing just endlessly. People write books on that. Like... Yeah, I think it's obvious. I mean, this kind of has to do with the conspiracy thing, like the lone conspiracy guy on YouTube, where he obviously has a big incentive to say there is conspiracy and to kind of prove there is a conspiracy. Just like a lot of these guys who are so steeped in the JFK conspiracy. Like, don't you think they want there to be a conspiracy? Do you think they want there to find out, like, oh no, the government's government's line is 100% correct. Like, that'd probably be devastating to them. They obviously don't want that to be correct because they've dedicated so much of their life to finding out whether there is a conspiracy.
Let's essentially just assume that that's impossible and write that off. There are enough inconsistencies and there's enough things like Mockingbird and Northwoods and so on that you have to evaluate and say, okay, is the government story true, or is the guy on YouTube, the autistic guy on YouTube who made a 10-hour documentary, is he right? And you know, maybe you watch both of those and say, oh, the government was right. So I'm sure for some of those, that's valid. But we are of the opinion that, and we just disagree, that the government is able to carry out these kinds of deceptions, that they're willing, they're able to. There's evidence that that is the case. And so we need to evaluate. That's the problem, though, is people just call them conspiracy theories, and conspiracy theory is a synonym for crazy. Oh, that's a conspiracy theory. Dismissed.
Yeah, so the issue
theories are true
so the
sometimes.
issue is that if we approach anything, if we want to be Bayesians about it, right? And you're going to ask me without any evidence whatsoever, who's more capable of concocting a conspiracy and lying? Is it going to be 10,000 people of different backgrounds, political affiliations, interests in the government, interests in the private sector, and everything? Are those people all going to come together and conduct some kind of plan against the American people? Or
so to kind of explain what Destiny's getting at is, like, Bayesian statistics is it's what I want. Why are you presenting it like this? Why are you showing me graphs? Oh my god. Bro. Oh my god, this should just be so easy to show. I just want this given whatever. Right, okay. So basically this is what Bayesian analysis is. It's, you're not really quite sure what this is, but it's the probability of A given C. And so if A is contingent on C, then what's the probability of C? Because if you need C to get A, you understand? So it's like, if, like, the classic example is, if A is a disease, whether you have it or you don't have it, and C is the test result saying you have it or don't have it. So the classic example is, like, if C is a positive, like, this will actually be kind of mind-blowing to people who don't know this. So this is, I'll remember this perfectly from the textbook. So let's say that A represents a condition known as conditionitis, which affects 1% of the population. So that's A. So that would be 0.01 would be, you could substitute that for A. C is the test you perform to test whether someone has conditionitis. And conditionitis, again, so this is what it is. Conditionitis is a disease that affects 1% of the population, and there's this test C we use that is 95% accurate, so 0.05. So if you get a positive test result, what are the chances that you have conditionitis? Are they likely, unknown, or unlikely? And the answer is unlikely, because in a group of, 10,000, no, a group of 1,000, there will be 100 people who have conditionitis, right? It affects 1% of the population, 1% of 1,000 is 100. But that means if you test using this, there's going to be a 5% error rate there. There's going to be 500 people who are tested in this population who will test positive. It's 95% accurate. So that means 5% of the time it's going to be wrong. And 5% of 1,000 is 500. That's a lot of people who are wrong. So that means of those 500, only 100 of those people in that population actually have it. Right? That's kind of crazy. So that means out of 500 who tested positive, only 20% of them actually have it. So it's very unlikely if you test positive, you'll actually have it. And what you need to do is get a second opinion, because then you have two positives compounding to check you. So it would be like, what is the probability of A given C and some other test both being positive. And then you're much more likely to know whether you actually have conditionitis. But just doing the test once isn't very good. And this is kind of what happens with cancer. It can be very hard because detecting cancer can be very hard, especially early on. And so that's kind of what Destiny's saying, where we can't really make a judgment on what A is. So A is the conspiracy theory, and C is kind of the conditions that dictate what would be necessary for that conspiracy theory to take place. And so instead of talking about, what's the chances of the government actually assassinating JFK, he's kind of breaking it down, saying, well, you would need all these things C to take care of the conspiracy A, which I think is smart. But just say, I don't think a lot of people understand what, or know, just know what Bayesian analysis, Bayesian statistics, like that kind of. I think it's just statistics. This might be something else. I mean, there's the Bayesian model, but that's kind of statistics too. But that's what Destiny's talking about when he's talking about, being Bayesian about this. Sneako's falling asleep over here.
Is one dude who has every incentive to lie to you as much as possible to make as much money as possible as YouTube. Is that guy going to lie to you? Well, the probability exists that, of course, the guy on YouTube is lying to you. Now, is it impossible that there might be some nefarious things that are coordinated at high levels between lots of people? It's not impossible. It's just highly unlikely. And you need a very high standard of evidence to meet that. I can't talk to you about every fucking conspiracy theory in the 40s, 50s, 60s, 70s. I can talk to you about the coronavirus. I can talk to you about vaccines. I can talk to you about ivermectin, hydroxychloroquine. And I can tell you consistently on every single one of these topics, you guys are pure NPCs. Every talking point is an
because then you have to, and I have no idea what Sneeko would say, but I have a hard time believing Nick would agree that the government is this competent that they can get away with these like complicated, convoluted, large-scale operations again and again and again without there being like a lot of evidence to go around. Like, and I mean like clear evidence. Like someone saying something, or there's evidence of someone saying something, or there's information that gets out, or something really just doesn't make sense. Someone acts in a way that is just absolutely incongruent with the information that's available. And that's just so hard to believe that they're able to do this again and again and again, especially when you consider that there's other major actors, like with the US, there's China. China wants to check the US, and the US wants to check China. And also within the U.S., you have the Democrats and you have the Republicans. Where, like right now, Joe Biden's president, and the Democrats did some fucked up shit. You better bet your ass that the Republicans would be like, Joe Biden did this messed up stuff. Do not vote for him again. Vote for Trump or DeSantis or whatever, right? That would obviously be very good for them. And so there was that kind of like very good check and balance due to that rivalry.
NPC talking point. Every single new drug that you want is a bot drug. Every single opinion you have related to a mask or a vaccine is straight manufactured from some dude selling you fucking vitamin supplements on the fucking Alex Jones show, all the way down to you thinking that like eating horse paste is going to be a better way to cure a disease than what fucking every academic institution and hospital around the world is telling you.
Did you take ivermectin?
No.
Yeah, I didn't either. Why are you assuming that? You're calling us NPCs about that?
Because every anti-establishment talking point, first it was ivermectin, then it was fucking first it was hydroxychloroquine, then it was.
He's making fun of what Destiny's doing here. He's making fun of the thought process of being conspiratorial. Where Sneako's saying like, oh, we didn't do that, but like, if Sneako did say he'd taken ivermectin, would anyone be surprised? I wouldn't.
Ivermectin, it was remdesivir for a little bit. It was every single new different fucking drug. What?
I didn't take any pills. You just called me an NPC about that.
That's great that you didn't, but these are the YouTube talking points. I don't know when you got into the YouTube anti-vaxxer shit, but these were all the mainstream YouTube talking points every single day.
Destiny, I'm just curious about this because, I think that I understand what you're saying. It's just about simplicity. What is more likely? There's a crazy guy that went off, or 10,000 people got together. You would say it's probably more likely that the individual did. And I get that, like, in theory. I get that, like, as an abstract rule. But when you're talking about the president's shot, which has major ramifications, or like 9/11. 9/11, you could say, changed the course of world history. Because what were the results of 9/11?
And so this is Nick doing this is doing exactly the thing that he knows that, like, isn't his political philosophy. Or his political strategy for organizing, where he's saying that if there was such a big effect there had to be a major cause. You know, for this impact to happen, there had to be some major thing that instituted that force, or some major player that was able to create that force. It couldn't just be, you know, some one-off event. It had to be something that was like very serious, very planned, very sophisticated to have such a major impact like we saw. And like, you know, going back to the Kennedy Reagan thing, like, this is just, it's very tempting, but I think we have to understand, like, what if Kennedy didn't die? Would we still think there's conspiracy? Probably not.
Patriot Act, war in Afghanistan, war in Iraq, surveillance state, etc. And it's like, you know, yeah, maybe it was a bunch of, you know, it was 19 Muslims who were deranged and they got on planes. Okay.
It wasn't just 19 Sunni Muslims deranged and just randomly got on planes, but okay, go ahead.
Let's just miss the point entirely.
Sure, yeah. Well, I mean, when you present the story, it's like, wow, what a coincidence. They all did it on the same.
Right. I mean, he's making it seem like that he's not doing that, but that's key to the story. So Osama bin Laden actually did plan this. Like, there was a level of sophistication to 9/11.
Miss the point entirely. Let me just precisely.
Yeah, let's get precise. What did Bush do? Tell me.
We can trust. The point is, when it's something that has grave consequences like that, and it's something that's obviously such a pivotal point in world history, and there's questions raised about it, see, the thing is, you're not even interested. You don't even know the lore about the conspiracies because you never looked into them. And it's like, you could say, well, I assume it's more likely. Bayesian analysis tells us, okay, well, you know, that doesn't really work when you're talking about 3,000 dead people and 2 major wars, really like 10 wars, realistically, 2 ground wars, but really like 10.
And so, like, you can see that Nick's doing this, right? Where he's saying that this big impact can't possibly be that easy to explain. There has to be more to it. And this is also very natural to Nick because, you know, Nick's a big Catholic and he believes, like, there has to be meaning to life. This can't just be all it is. There has to be more. There has to be meaning to life, you know? And that's very much that thinking where, you know, it's kind of like when a tragedy happens, a lot of people will think, like, why did this happen? I mean, like, kind of, I don't want to sound shallow or uncaring, but, like, I mean, like, kind of like an everyday tragedy, like a car accident, like a drunk driver hits someone. And maybe that's not really everyday, but, you know, that is a bit more commonplace than 9/11. I hope we can agree with that. It's very tempting to say, like, well, why did this happen? And you'll see that, like, a lot of people will blame themselves. Because, like, that's kind of the meaning they get from it, where they're like, well, why did I should have been driving, or, you know, we could have done some other plan, or, you know, like, they'll come up with a million ways to kind of blame themselves because they think there has to be more to it than just, like, that random chance where if, you know what I mean, you just try to look for other meaning, like, what's the meaning of life after this? It can be very hard because it's such a high impact event where, you know, you lose a loved one. And it's just kind of hard to believe where it's just like, oh, someone just went out to a bar by themselves and got wasted and drove home and then crashed into your loved one and killed them. Like, that's kind of hard to believe that, like, one individual can be, like, so careless and, like, you know what I mean? Like, you would at least hope, like, they had some, like, great lead up story for why they got drunk and then drove home, but it's like, nope, they just drove home. And, like, maybe they've done it 1,000 times before and it was just this time they got, you know, too drunk, or they just, for whatever reason, they weren't driving their best that night for whatever reason, even though they weren't more drunk than usual, and it just so happens they, like, T-boned or head-on collisioned your loved one. And that's, like, you know, that can be really hard to kind of come to terms with, where you really want it to be, you want there to be more to the story than just, like, something that kind of boring. You want there to be more. And I think Nick's kind of falling prey to that, where if this one event can lead to such pivotal change, there has to be more to that one event.
10 wars, plus all these other things. like that kind of, those assumptions which you're making based on probability just aren't good enough. You have to look into it. And when that kind of money is at stake, that's what you would call motive. When there's trillions of dollars at stake, trillions of dollars in contracts, and you're talking about the power to surveil the public, and you're talking about military occupation in the Middle East, which is at the intersection of 3 continents, not to mention the strategic assets and the strategic considerations, China on the east, Russia in the north, Israel in the west. It's like, it's not good enough to just say, well, I assume the government couldn't do that. No, you got to look into it. And you may look into it and come away and say, oh, it's totally unconvincing. But to dismiss it and hand wave it away and say, oh, that's a conspiracy theory, that's my argument. What I'm saying is, I'm not coming to you and saying 9/11 was a hoax. I'm saying 9/11 could be a hoax. And if 9/11 could be a hoax, everybody needs to look into it and know damn well that it wasn't. Maybe it wasn't. I wish it wasn't.
Sure, and I
better.
agree with you. It's good to ask questions, but you guys don't just ask questions. You guys believe in literally every single fucking conspiracy in the world.
Yeah, I mean, because they start at the position that the government is always wrong, so you're probably going to believe in a lot of conspiracies. You're going to be you're going to have a much higher level of openness to conspiracies when you naturally believe what the government says is a lie.
Do you think the government puts fluoride in the water for nefarious purposes?
Just how you believe in conspiracy theories in the first place.
Hold on. I'm curious. Do you think the government? Do you think the government puts fluoride in the water for conspiracies, Nick?
For conspiracies?
I
don't think they do it for
conspiracies. They do it.
Why do they do it?
Well, they say it's for the teeth. I happen to think there's adverse health.
Yeah. Okay. So for nefarious, do you think the shooter in Vegas?
I don't think they do it.
Hold on. I'm just running down. I'm
The
curious.
shooter in Vegas, that was obviously fake.
Yeah, that was obviously fake. Okay. 9/11.
The Prince of Saudi Arabia was there at Mandalay Bay when it happened.
Yep. 9/11 wasn't real. Okay. 9/11 was set up by Bush or whatever. And you don't know if you don't know that the moon landing is real. Let's see. What other?
Hang on.
Yeah.
You've never looked into any of that.
What do you think?
So you assume the government is telling the truth on all of them.
I don't have time to look into every.
You don't have the time. You're a professional streamer.
Go ahead and don't let me. Yeah, don't let me. Yeah, go ahead. Keep screaming.
You have time to debate this stuff, but you can't look into it.
Keep throwing the fuck out. I'll debate what's topical, and I'll read. That's why if you want to talk about mRNA vaccines, or you want to talk about any of the recent stuff related to the pandemic, I could talk all day about that because that's what I've researched. What?
Have you seen the new Pearl Harbor, the 9/11 documentary?
No.
Oh, you gotta watch that.
But you have to watch that.
Yeah, you
guys are. It's still more 9/11 truth or shit.
Why don't we put it on stream right now? It's on YouTube.
No, because
why won't you watch it?
Because
you have some time right now.
Watch it.
It's 1:30 a.m. I gotta sleep soon. Okay.
Watch it tomorrow. Watch
Number
it tomorrow.
one. Number two.
Let's watch it together.
I don't have.
Let's watch it right now.
No, I don't have time to. I don't have time to research every.
You're a fed, bro. You're literally a fed.
I don't have time to research every single fucking conspiracy theory. I don't have time. You got Nick lives and breathes every single fucking conspiracy theory on the internet. This guy knows why the frogs are turning gay. This guy knows what happened to JFK. This guy knows that we never went to the moon. This guy knows I don't have the time. I don't have the time.
You were playing Dungeons of Dragons when I pulled up to your stream. You have plenty of goddamn time.
Sure.
Potions with 4 white dudes go, oh, let's go, where's your potion? Watch a documentary.
If you
take that magic, your fans don't even.
Dude, what is wrong with their mics? Are they just hitting the gain limit?
Like that content. They tell me in the group chat they think it's boring when you play D&D.
If you want to give me a conspiracy theory like we've done with the JFK shit and give me time to research it, I'll do it and it'll come on. But I'm not going to step into this arena where you don't have any engagement with reality. You don't know anything about the real world. It's all conspiracy theories. That would be like us having a debate on fucking D&D. Do you want? It absolutely makes sense. Do you want to debate D&D with me right now? No, because you don't know fuck all about it. Because it's probably a waste of your time. Just like it's usually a waste of my time to dig into the 50 million fucking conspiracy theories that these guys believe in. Digging into whether or not it was set up by fucking Bush, yeah, that's a waste of my fucking time. I would rather spend more time in reality with my feet on the ground, figure out what's going on, than having some dude preaching to me about how every part of the government is conspiring against you, dude.
In the Shire, your feet on the ground in Dungeons and Dragons world.
Hopper is actually taking government
I'm actually getting so triggered by Sneeko's mic. It's actually killing me.
interviews and reading the 9/11 Commission book. It's not one guy preaching, it's showing evidence. It's really convincing.
You're drawing constellations. You're taking one or two people.
Right, and that's the thing that it's so easy to... Like, you've heard of Occam's razor? Like, that's the thing... And that's why, like, looking at the incentives is so important. To think... Because I think a lot of times it's really tempting to just think, like... You know, people are perfectly immoral, but, like, I mean, people get messed up. Like, people get PTSD. Like, the government's just not finding all these like cold-blooded like thugs to go out and just do these murders, like who just can do it no problem. They're like, yeah, we'll give you $1 million, you'll be super rich. Like, that'd be really hard to find. Just these super skilled super soldiers. Like, it's always very movie, like, and that's why it's really important to follow these incentives, because you know you usually have to go out and find these horrible people, but these horrible people usually aren't super trustful. So like, it's just the more people you involve, then the more extreme stuff you're doing, the more like the likelihood of it being exposed and, you know, getting out there it increases. That's kind of what I wonder with Operation Northwood. Like, if we were to have just regular soldiers committing acts of terror, like, I just can't. I can imagine one of those dudes would be like, yo, this is messed up. Like, can't live with this. I need to let people know, but
people that you want to trust, you're reading their books, and then you're watching the right YouTube videos to connect it.
That is hilarious.
The new Pearl Harbor is every single person involved, and when you watch it, it's overwhelming evidence. This shit is bullshit. From top to bottom.
Okay, Sneeko.
Hang on.
No, Sneeko, I'll do this. Sneeko, do you want it? You want to set up a date for that? We can do that too. I'll fucking add that.
Do it.
That's what I know.
I'm not prepared to watch it right now. I'm not gonna sit here.
You gonna take notes to watch a movie?
Yes, that's how conspiracy theories work. Because there's gonna be 7,000 things brought up that I've never fucking heard in my entire life. That's how these things always work.
But yeah, because like Nico's sitting here acting like he's just like scholar of what reality is, and he looks into everything, and then here he is saying he doesn't do that. Someone makes a good-looking movie, and he's like, "Yep, this is undeniable." I do love how his L is backwards, but maybe it was right the first time.
It's a movie. Let's just watch it.
Take this. Wait, Destiny, I just can't believe that this dude really said, well, you want to debate me on D&D?
Sneeko, give me a time and a date.
You probably think that's a waste of time.
Give me a time and a date.
That's why I won't debate you on 9/11, because 9/11, it's like,
give me a time and a date. Give me a time and a date.
Watch a documentary.
Give me a time and a date.
I want to see this.
Oh, here's something that I have researched. Do you watch 2,000 Mules?
No.
Oh, okay, of course not. Yeah,
This
fuck.
is a blue
That's
pill.
election.
This is a red pill.
Yep.
No, Dinesh D'Souza's cringe. He ruined San Francis's career.
Oh, shit.
Which
Oh, yeah,
one,
I forget you guys
Destiny?
hate every other conservative.
Shit.
Give me a time and a date for the 9/11 shit if you want. We can do that. I just need time to prepare. Give me time to prepare and I'll do it.
Why do you need to prepare to watch a movie?
I need to
one?
prepare because there's going to be a whole bunch of random dumb shit brought up that I've never heard of before. And obviously, he's put together a documentary, so by the end of it all, it's going to be really convincing. But that's just because I don't know the arguments for any point. I can't know every single thing in the world. My brain isn't that big.
Fed. You're such a fed.
Give me a time and a date.
Who's paying you? Are you being paid by the government?
Give me a time and a date. Bro, you're getting paid to tell people exactly what they want to hear. That's the difference between you and me. You're getting paid to tell your audience exactly what they want to hear.
Nigga, I'm not getting paid. I'm banned from all the banks.
Are you making money doing what you're doing?
Hardly. We have some Turkish payment problem.
You're about to fly.
Shit, dude. Nick Fuentes makes a ton of money. Like, the government seized $500,000. The FBI seized $500,000 from his bank account. This dude wasn't living on the streets after that, so I think this guy's got cash. I mean, if you just have that in your bank account, I think you're doing all right. I think you're doing more than all right.
Fly to fucking Florida to have a little vacation. What happened to that $400,000 in crypto? Listen. Obviously, you're getting paid. You're getting money. You're not broke.
I invested my money wisely. Okay,
you can't
white
invest.
People get money, don't spend it.
There's the
money, buy
obfuscation.
business.
There's the pivoting. You have an audience because they come to you to listen to your particular message that's never going to change. That's what they're coming to you for.
The CIA,
and they're not going to. Yeah, I get paid by the CIA. Yeah, dude.
Government.
I'm cutting a fat check from the government. How did you guess, dude? How did you know that?
Because you're not even interested in
What a
whether
fucking
9/11's fake or not.
Because I don't have time to research I'm not interested if the frogs are turning gay or not.
That's your job.
That's not my job. My job is to entertain people on YouTube. That is not my job.
Actually, that makes no sense. If you're getting mad at me for watching conspiracy videos and telling me to read Wikipedia, then why don't you read some conspiracy information?
I just love his volume. It's always like at a quiet yell, and that's his like inside voice. I love that.
If you're saying read both sides, if you're getting mad for blindly watching conspiracy videos, why I should get mad at you for only fucking digesting what the government already told you?
Sure. Then that's what I'm saying. If you want to give me a topic, I'll dig into it and we can go through it.
But until then, yeah, I'm not going to watch one conspiracy theory video on YouTube and be like, oh, wow, this guy that's getting paid to tell me conspiracy theories and has a whole audience that loves conspiracy theories is telling me about a conspiracy theory. Why the fuck would I go to that guy for information about the conspiracy theory?
Yeah, it's true. We should trust the government instead. Don't trust some autist.
Yeah, why would we trust the government, of changing people that's made up of tens of thousands of individuals with accountability agencies and government oversight panels? Why would I trust that stupid shit when I could just trust the one fucking schizophrenic dude on fucking YouTube? True.
Government chill. I trust the schizos. I trust the people that have their lives destroyed trying to tell the truth and get censored.
Tell the truth, yeah, of
9/11
course.
conspiracies are against the community guidelines, but you're like, I trust Wikipedia. Okay.
Where's this Pearl Harbor video that you wanted to link me? Is it on YouTube? YouTube. Yeah, nice one, Nick. Okay, so give me a time and a date.
It is against the TLS.
Why is it on YouTube then?
Yeah.
I don't know. Maybe they
there we go.
Okay, give me a time and a date for it. We can do
it's
it.
too based. Well, Sneeko, do you want to watch? I'll watch it with Destiny. You can watch it with
I'm
us.
down. What do you want to do it tomorrow?
Tomorrow, you're gonna give me one day to read everything on 9/11 fucking conspiracies?
He's got to prepare. He's got to get to State Department talking points. He's got to get a memo.
Hold on, let me. What is today? Is the night?
Clinton before watching this documentary?
What?
You gonna call Hillary and Bill up before you watch a movie?
Destiny, why don't you just
No,
watch
I
it
actually-
with an open mind?
I actually call Hunter
with an
Biden.
open mind and be open to the possibility that the things in it are true.
Because that's not how good research works. You don't start with the
Really?
highly editorialized
That is-
accounts. That's not how you learn about anything.
Wow.
That's why you believe everything Russia says about Ukraine, Nick, is when you start with the
Exposed.
highly biased accounts, of course you're going to come in with a highly biased opinion.
Putin's a G. Of course I trust Putin.
If you want to try, yeah, of course, yeah. Why would Putin ever lie about anything? Yeah,
Joe
of course,
Biden.
of course. Telling me about the
Russia-
evils of the American CIA, but you'll go and suck off the Wagner group and
America
fucking
is evil.
Putin. That's the funniest shit in the
America
world
is
right
evil.
there.
Russia's totally freaking
100%.
based.
We can
Look,
do the
Destiny, they have
we
to
can
go
do-
into it with an open.
If he actually believes that, that actually triggers the shit out of me. They're either America's bad, so is fucking Russia.
Mind
We can
to be
do- I
open to
have
the
an open mind.
possibility that you're wrong.
I have an open mind.
You're
I
like,
do.
Well, I have to prepare. I have to read all the counterpoints and then watch.
It's not
it.
reading the
Like, you have to be
counterpoints.
open
It's
mind.
like it's getting as informed as possible the facts of the matter. Then it's looking up at
Okay.
stories from both sides. Yeah. So we can do the
Sure.
20-second. Sneeko, if you want, we can do the 20-second on it.
Let's do it.
20
That's a Monday.
20
3 days from now.
What?
Let's do it.
Okay. I'm gonna do. You're in EST, right?
Yeah.
Okay. 9/11 debate on the 22nd.
Let's go!
At
Dude,
6
we're
p.m.,
gonna
okay?
Dude, Sneeko, we're gonna red pill everybody.
It's a
Dude, Destiny's gonna ruin this. I know Destiny. He's doing his best to be nice here. And it's kind of a change of this, where Destiny's kind of willing to get sort of more of the joking atmosphere, where he's more serious here. But this didn't look good for Sneak, especially not Sneeko, and I don't think it looked good for Nick.
fucking 5-hour documentary though.
Yeah, it's gonna be an endurance test, Destiny.
Yo, Nick, you realize I'm gonna get called coon now because you dropped the N-word in front of me.
Oh, I'm sorry.
Well, call him out for it.
That was
Yeah.
impolite. I should have said that.
Damn, you didn't do that when Dion, Young Don, and Abba was on.
uh-oh.
But
What
now
does that
if
mean?
comes
What does he
to
think of
Alabama-
you?
I got heated earlier. You can admonish me.
All right, that was enough admonishing.
Okay. There you go. Well, hey, for what it's worth, Destiny subreddit, they said that you're like Sam Jackson in Django Unchained. Now,
Yeah, they
that's
called me
fucking...
a coon. Your white audience was calling me a coon because I'm
Yes.
talking to somebody who I agree
Hold
with
on,
the
they don't
most.
use
Well,
the
That's
coon
fucking
word. They
racist.
just say Uncle
That's
Tom. Okay,
racist.
that's different,
That's
right?
liberal racism. That is liberal racism. Your fans are all white, Destiny. Every single person who watches you is a white dude.
No
and they're all
shot, dude.
gay. And they're all trans.
And they're LGBT. I would argue Nick has more minority fans than you, Destiny.
Absolutely not. No shot,
is-
dude.
that is totally
no
true.
shot,
Hey, I've been
dude.
shooting both of you off your bit. I've seen more Black Nick fans than Black Destiny fans, even though your name is an R&B singer from the 90s.
Where you've seen like 2 fucking Fuentes fans? What are you talking about?
No, I've been in the sub. They've been tweeting at me. They've been spamming my chat.
Oh,
I've
the
met
guys
them.
with the black faces, so they can say the N-word on Twitter. Those are the Black Nick Fuentes fans.
No, the people who put me on to Nick were Black and Spanish. We got that rapper dude, Bryson, I forget his last name, who's
True,
been like
that's 3.
doing Trump raps, saying that he wants to get on the show. I think he's in the chat right now watching this.
Okay, well, I guess
Bryce
next time I'll
Fuentes.
bring all of my black fans, and Fuentes can bring all of his black. We can all bring all of our black fans to see us more. Okay.
All right, I'll be rolling 50 black fans deep, okay? Because because I'm there for my black friends, and they're there for me, because we're real, and we all dislike women, right? So that's really the cornerstone. I'm kidding. Yeah, but I found that very offensive. I saw that post. That was deeply offensive that they said that. They said I was like Leonardo DiCaprio, and they said Sneeko was like Sam Jackson.
Yeah. Liberal racism
Totally.
is classic white people, condescending tactics.
Sick. It makes me sick.
I'm not a
Messed
fan
up,
of
man.
that, yeah.
Not
At
good.
least Nick loves black people. Come on, Destiny.
I would never say that. I would never say that.
Because he doesn't.
I would never say that blacks are Uncle Toms, because I respect black people even when they disagree with me. Not even when they're useful pawns for my liberal agenda.
Nick, you literally think black people are
Nico,
genetically
welcome to the
inferior.
plantation.
You think that black people are
Those are your
genetically,
words.
intellectually inferior.
I think that on average they have lower IQs, but
Why do they have lower IQ? Why do they have lower IQs on average, Nick?
There's race differences.
Nick,
They're
why do you?
real.
Hold on, talk to me about this. Why do you think they have
Sneak
lower?
up.
Well, okay, here.
Because
Sneak
of
up. This is
genetics.
there. You go. So what did I just say that you disagree with? Because of
You
genetics.
said that
They're-
I think they're inferior. That's
no, I
completely
said you said they're
different.
intellectually inferior.
You just said, roll the tape. Roll the tape.
They're intellectually inferior.
Roll the
Say
tape.
it. You think they're less intelligent because
See, I think this is like also really good at Destiny. Really make him say the things.
of their genetics.
No, I'm saying.
What do you mean no? Wait, why are you saying no? Wait, why are you saying no?
We're talking about group differences on
No, we're
average.
not talking about group difference. We're talking about genetics.
Yes, we are. Yes, we are. We talk about individuals, and we could say that an individual will have a higher IQ than another person. But we're talking about groups. We're talking about how IQ is distributed among many people. So it's not to say,
We're not just talking about the
I'm not saying
distribution
that.
of IQ. We're talking about why it's distributed differently, and you think that's because
Yeah,
of genetics.
Because IQ is a genetic trait. It's a heritable trait. And by the way, most IQ researchers believe this. The majority of IQ researchers believe that.
that race can
IQ
explain the
researchers?
differences in IQ between groups.
That IQ is heritable. That IQ
Hold
is
on,
a
Nick,
heritable
Nick,
trait.
Nick, hold on. Stop. Because now you're on a topic that I know more about. That's what you just said were two totally different statements. Saying that IQ is heritable, that's not debated, of course. Over 200 different genes have been identified that relate to IQ. Saying that group differences in IQ are due to genetic differences, that's a totally different statement.
Of course, one follows from the other.
It-
Are you
no,
listening
one
to what
doesn't
you're saying? Absolutely, it does.
It doesn't. What are you talking about?
Absolutely, it does. If there are measurable differences between the IQs, and IQ is a heritable trait, I mean, I'm sorry. What are you missing here about that? Of course, that makes it genetic.
Because there could be totally different. You can break apart the fucking what are they, GWASP or whatever. You can break apart all
GWAS.
these different genetic.
Every time I hear that now, I always think of speaking of the serfs doing a terrible job arguing with someone. Destiny serfs. GWAS studies. I always
JF
think
is a
of
very
JF going GWAS studies. Maybe we'll just say GY. Oh, I have to find this. There it is.
Correlation between GWAS studies and twin
GWAS
studies
studies.
and
Alright.
What are you missing here about that? Of
GWAS
course, that makes it genetic.
studies.
Because there could be totally different. You can break apart the fucking what are they, GWASP or whatever. You can break apart all these different genetic informations on groups of people and find tons of different genes across tons of different populations that control our IQ. The idea that we can concretely say that the IQ difference from one population to another is just because of genes, that is not a position that's held. That is not. Hold on. That is.
Why are Nigerians are so many engineers? Why do Nigerians dominate?
That is not a position that's held by the majority of IQ researchers. That's a really strong statement to make.
100% it is.
Okay.
And the reason why and that's a good question, Sneeko, it's because the thing is, if you look at Africa, there's going to be 5 billion Africans by 2100. You're going to have fewer proportionally fewer high IQ black geniuses in Africa, proportionately than you would in Asia, but there's going to be a shitload of black geniuses by 2100 just because of how big the population will be. And the point is, the reason why Nigerians have such a high income in America is because in America we have an immigration system where the people that are allowed to come in, if they're not let in illegally or for other reasons, are the highest IQ. They're the best of the best and the brightest. So that's why. So if you're looking at Nigerians, well, all the Nigerians that are here because of immigration, and the reason that they immigrated is because they were high IQ and had jobs here. They had a work visa or something. So that's why. But that's a.
And what's interesting is a lot of white nationalists, anti-immigration people, they'll make the argument that because the U.S. does do that, where if you have a PhD, a master's, you'll have a much easier time getting into the U.S., immigrating to the U.S. And a big part of that is because you'll obviously you'll be a great asset to the economy, to the country, whatever. And you're probably not going to cause problems because you're going to be productive, because one thing we don't do in our immigration policy is taking people who are going to need welfare right away, because then it's like you're coming here and then you're going to be a burden right away because you're just going to go on welfare, so you're going to be taking out more than you're putting in. But so then if you have a very valuable degree, good degree, whatever, well you start a company, you're much more likely to get your citizenship. And one thing that white nationalists say is that that's actually a bad thing for the other countries. Is that what they're leaving out is they think it's good that we leave out those poor people from coming in, taking out more than they're putting in, but we should also stop people from coming in who will definitely put in more than they'll take out, doctors and master's degree holders, PhDs or whatever, because we're basically doing the brain drain from those poorer countries, where these valuable individuals with these valuable skills would go far to help that country build up its capital, become more developed, and be a better place.
Problem, because then we're taking all the high IQ people out of countries like Nigeria. Wouldn't it be good if Nigeria had those engineers and intelligent people?
No, that's not true either. There's literally no empirical data. Yeah, it's called brain drain, and there's no data to support it. There's usually data that points to the opposite.
It's logical.
That when it's not just, you can't just say it's logical to make an argument.
Of course it
right?
is.
If you have a really smart person, but they don't have access to intensive capital.
Right. So you might be thinking that. So I think it's important that when we talk about brain drain, and they might even be. So I think Nick is kind of what do you call it? He's doing the bait and switch, because brain drain does happen, but that's an economic term for people who have valuable skills. They have a much higher ability to be mobile and move from wherever they live, right? So if you're a really good doctor, any country would probably want to have you. So you could go wherever you want to go. You can basically name your price, go to any country, and that country would probably love to have you. Or, if you have a very successful company and you have a lot of money to start a company, almost every country would want to have you, because you'd go into that country, you'd start a company, and you'd hire a bunch of people. That's good for the country, that's good for the economy. It's almost all good for you to do that. But in that kind of brain drain, it's just that what they're referring to is these people who have good degrees or have these valuable skills that they acquired in that country will then leave that country. So essentially that country, you'll see this in Greece and Bulgaria, where you'll go to the public school system, acquire those skills at the expense of the state, and then you'll leave the country, and basically all that investment that the country put into your schooling then leaves. The country spent all this investment into building your human capital, and then that human capital is going somewhere else where the payoff of that investment in human capital is not returning to the country, it's going somewhere else. That's that's the standard brain drain. But for Nick, he's kind of swapping it in as if these are the same things, but what he's talking about with brain drain is this other kind of idea that when those successful people, leave or whatever, is that's really the smartest people leaving. So then, the genetic stock that's left of the people in that country who weren't doctors or whatever are on average lower IQ. And so the people who are left in this country on average have a lower IQ, and they're going to have more babies, and the distribution of the IQ, if this is high IQ, this is low IQ, will go like this. So the average will drop down, and the absolute max of the IQ will drastically fall. So then the IQ on average will fall, and instead of being higher, and then wherever it's going will increase. But he's doing a little bait and switch here, and that is what he's saying. And there is no evidence proving the IQ one. And that'd be really, really hard to prove.
For higher productivity or good educational institutions to be able to utilize their intelligence more, that person isn't going to grow into who they could be otherwise. So no, taking a really intelligent person from, then why are you saying it's logical? Taking a really intelligent person from a country where they don't have those same opportunities and then bringing them to the United States oftentimes can make those countries at home even stronger, because there's an inflow and an outflow of information that occurs when educated people go to the United States and then go back to their country as well. This is something that is documented. Brain drain is not. If you want to go look up studies for brain drain, you're not going to find any that support the concept.
Dude, I mean, you're literally obfuscating. You're obfuscating.
I'm not obfuscating. You can't say I'm obfuscating every time you're wrong about something. That's not how obfuscation works.
Obviously what you're doing, because if America is bringing the smartest people out of Nigeria, and if those people are, of course you're right, if they get educated here and go back, that's different. But if you're talking about they come here and they stay here, then we're literally taking smart people that were going to be there and here. Now you're right that maybe they wouldn't reach their full potential over there, but then the solution would be invest in capital over there. If that's what you want to
invest
do.
In capital. Look at how you're just saying random retarded shit. What if we invest in capital over there? What do we invest? What are we going to invest in capital over there? There's a huge difference between just throwing money into random countries versus the most educated people coming to the United States, getting educated over here, getting good jobs.
I feel like Nick is kind of just. I think he's just. I don't think he wants this debate at the moment.
Sending remittances back to their people, which can be a big source of income, right? Or bringing other people from those countries, or traveling back to those countries with their level of education. Like, this is stuff that's talking about. You can go look up NPER papers on.
Remittances are actually a big deal. Like some countries, like Mexico, for example, a sizable part of their GDP is remittances from Mexicans living in the U.S. who send money back. It can be really significant to a developing economy. It can be really important. I think it's also a thing in like kind of the Southeast Asia, because like they'll move and work in China and they'll send a lot of money back, or they'll work in India, they'll send a lot of money back. They'll live in Saudi Arabia, they'll send money back, and it's really, really helpful to those economies.
I don't know if you want, but like, I'm not going to sit here and argue with a fucking dictionary.
Remittances and human capital. Well, look, we don't need all these high IQ people. Look at all the remittances they sent to us. Look at all this cash they sent us.
Having a high IQ person in your country, isn't going to be relevant if you don't have the educational institutions or the capital for them to take advantage of those intelligences.
How are they ever going to progress if they don't have high IQ?
By traveling to another country, by getting educated, and then by working back with their home. They don't have to, but they tend to do so. They tend to do so.
They're going to build their country from America. All the high IQ people are going to go to America and rebuild Nigeria from across the ocean. That doesn't even make any sense. Oh, put a st- at that, so it must be true.
People tend to maintain the connections. People tend to maintain the connections both in education and in family and in corporation when they travel to other countries to work. A lot of that information travels back and forth. Again, you can go and look up NBER papers on this. Is a well-documented concept. Brain drain is not supported by any studies. It's a concept that exists in a dictionary. Okay.
Of course, if high IQ people leave one country and go to another,
of course. If a high IQ person just sits in a fucking country with a person to take advantage of like his talents or his capabilities, that's so much better for them. Nice.
Yeah, it's true. The country should have no high IQ people, and all the high IQ people should be across the.
Or people with high IQ should be able to sort themselves into the appropriate educational institutions, get appropriate jobs that allow them to earn more money. Yeah, what?
Nick, they're getting on my ass right now. Just I appreciate the free speech and everything, but you can't drop the N-word. You can't do that anymore on the stream.
I just said it one time on accident.
Just don't do it again. I know.
I know. I just
don't fuck with that.
Oh, did they beat that out? That's why I didn't hear it.
But the Jews don't. The Jews don't.
Well, as long as they're in Minecraft, right? As long as you're in Grand Theft Auto 5.
Okay.
But
get my ass right now.
Since he said it once, do I get one pass, or am I just miss out on that opportunity?
That one go against you. You're canceled. Nick, you get that one time. There was an A.
Unbelievable! Wow, unbelievable, dude.
Out of control.
Well, anyway, any final words? What?
Documentary? The 22nd?
The 22nd what?
You watching that 9/11 documentary, 9/11 debate?
20? You mean the 4-hour one? Yeah, I'll watch it. I have a date. I'll watch it. I'll do the research.
What research you have to do to prepare? I don't understand what you're gonna do.
Well, one is I've got to watch the documentary from start to finish. 2, I need to document the claims in that documentary that contradict the official story. And then 3, I need to start researching why the differences in those claims exist. So, for instance, if they make a claim about like jet fuel can't melt steel beams, well, then it looks like the next thing I'm going to be doing is researching like, well, how does flame affect steel beams, right? If I find out that they melt at some temperature, I'm like, wow, that's some bullshit. Or I find out that they lose 80% of their integrity at some temperature, I'm like, oh, okay, well, that explains the difference. That's the process through which I research.
What I heard for that is people think that melting means, turn to liquid, and that is kind of what it means. But also it can mean like if you ever just heated up metal, it'll do that. And so what they think happened is the jet came into the tower, burning super, super hot. There's all that other stuff in the building also that's also burning. The carpet, paper, all that bullshit. And basically they think the ceiling sagged, perhaps, collapsed a little bit, where stuff from a higher floors could come in and then weigh on the second floor. And then that, that process would continue to the point where it's too much weight and floors are just giving away. And then it just, that floor gives away. And since now all the other floors are on top of this other floor, that gives away and it just cascades. And, there's no stopping it. That's why it collapsed like straight down like that.
Tower 7.
Yeah, we've all heard the same shit before. Thank you. Yes, Tower 7, yes.
You're going to watch this documentary, and if you don't get red pill that confirms you're a government spy, that's what you have to do. Sneeko, he's not going to go and research. He's got to go and call his government handler, and his government handler is going to say, these are the talking points we've been pushing for 20 years to deceive the American public.
Why are you so scared about me engaging critically with the material? Like, you just want me to watch your video and be convinced? You're so scared of me doing my... If I'm just going to sell you the same bullshit story that the government's telling you, then you should be able to disprove it all easily. You'll own me. You guys will destroy me in a debate.
I'm just saying you should go into it with an open mind.
I'm going to watch it, right?
Yeah, but you're not going into it with an open mind. You're going in there like, yeah, I'm going to point out all the flaws in this.
I didn't say...
You got to be open.
What did I say I was going to point out? What did I say I was going to point out?
You said you need to prepare.
Yes.
Yeah,
what did I say I was going to...
prepare if you have an open mind.
What did I say I was going to prepare? What did I say I was going to point out?
That'd be like if I was going to watch the Elvis
you don't remember?
And I was
so I'll tell you.
Before I see it, I need to watch all these negative reviews to make sure.
I didn't say anything about negative reviews. What I said is that there is a common, officially accepted story for what happened with 9/11. So what I'll do is I will watch the documentary and I will document the differences in claims between the commonly accepted story and their story, and then I'll research why is there a difference. Maybe it'll come to be that when I do the research at the end, I'll be like, wow, this documentary made a lot of really good arguments. There are no ways to account for these differences. Or maybe, probably more likely, I'll do the research and I'll find out, oh wow, this is accounted for by this or that or that. We'll see what happens.
Okay, I'm really curious to see how this goes, because
sounds good.
You're just like, you're just one of these government shills, bro. It's kind of sad to see. Where's the curiosity?
And you're an alt media shill. You are literally you're an NPC. You're one of the most bot people in the fucking world, bro. I can give you any government story in the world. What?
Who is Nick shilling for? You shill the people who control everything in our life.
Himself.
Who the fuck is Nick shilling for?
Nick is shilling for everybody that wants to feel like they're above the system.
Okay, so you shill for the powers that be, and Nick is shilling for independence.
I shill for people to critically engage the world and question things as they will, and to do research as they want.
Except for 9/11.
That's what if you want to question
9/11,
I just said I was going to research it. Why are you scared of me researching it, Nick?
Because I'm not.
You are. You're scared of it. I literally just told you that I'll research it.
There it is. There it is. There's those tactics again.
The tactics of scheduling a formal debate. Do you see?
Your weaselly tactics of saying, "Why are you afraid of?"
Nice. GY studies. One more time.
Well, you can get into Nature papers and you type genetic correlation between GWAS studies and...
God, that is a classic, bro. Can you say it again? GY. Damn, only one GY? GY studies. Classic, bro. All right. Well, I think that's it. Good night, everyone. Good night, Abwans.